is warning people in their communities to stay away from the state. Will you do so in solidarity, or are you tied to your timeshare or the allure of a free weekend at a seasoned condo, like alleged man of the people Jim Browdy, who just did that sunbathing within sight of Mar-a-Lago? Later in the show, Mayor Wu was here for Ask the Mayor, taking our questions and yours. All that ahead on Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. President Biden says investigators are getting close as they look into the leak of classified Pentagon documents. As NPR's Tamara Keith reports, the documents, released online, appear to contain U.S. military intelligence regarding Russia's war in Ukraine.
Biden had just finished ringing a ceremonial peace bell in Dublin when he was asked for an update on the investigation of leaked military intelligence.
There is a full-blown investigation going on, as you know, with the intelligence community and the Justice Department, and they're getting close.
And although the White House says they are taking this very seriously, Biden said the damage from the leak may be limited.
I'm concerned that it happened, but there's nothing contemporaneous that I'm aware of that is of great consequence.
Biden's response comes after a Washington Post article published Wednesday night included an interview with a young person who was in an online chat group where the alleged leaker shared documents. Tamara Keith, NPR News, traveling with the president.
A federal appeals court panel has partially blocked a ruling from a lower court judge on the abortion pill mifepristone. The appeals court says the FDA's approval of the drug can stay in place for now. It's a partial win for the Biden administration. But the appeals court panel put new restrictions on the drug. It cannot be sent by mail, and it can only be authorized up to 7 weeks of pregnancy instead of 10. White House spokeswoman Karine Jean-Pierre says the administration will continue to push its appeal.
We are going to continue to fight in the courts. We believe that the law is on our side, and we will prevail.
She spoke in Ireland, where President Biden is traveling. Biden will address Irish lawmakers today in the Parliament. He's met with other Irish leaders. The city of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, has declared an emergency in response to unprecedented storms. A deluge of rain fell in Broward County late yesterday. NPR's Kristen Wright reports the downpour shut down schools and Fort Lauderdale Hollywood Airport.
Torrential rain flooded the runways, suspending flights. People became stranded in their cars at the airport and elsewhere. Emergency crews responded to rescue calls all night. Up to 20 inches of rain fell in some areas quickly. South Florida is used to storms, but the National Weather Service's Ana Torres Vasquez describes this time as prolific and says more rain is coming.
These storms will be more typical to what we usually see here in South Florida, those scattered storms that come in, rain out, and leave, with less likelihood for severe impact.
Fort Lauderdale City Hall flooded, and Broward schools are closed due to the rain. Kristen Wright, NPR News.
On Wall Street, stocks are sharply higher. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is up about 150 points this hour at 33,793. The Nasdaq is up more than 160 points. That is more than 1%. This is NPR.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. The American Repertory Theater is moving out of its longtime home in Cambridge to Allston, Brighton. Officials for the theater say the new address will be 175 North Harvard Street and will be part of a new Harvard development that'll also offer housing for affiliates. The plans for the development were originally approved in 2013 with the intent to redevelop the site with a new basketball venue and a mixed-use development focusing on student housing. But a change of plans came last year, and the decision was made to move the ART to the site of the basketball pavilion. The move still needs required approval from the Boston Planning and Development Agency. And the MSPCA reminding people not to forget their pets in the hot weather today. Today could be the very first hazy Hutt and Henry day of the year. Rob Halpin with the MSPCA Angel Animal Hospital says, just like us, dogs aren't acclimated to summer temperatures at this time of year, and if left in a car, can suffer heat stroke within minutes. He advises keeping the pets at home.
There's just no reason for a dog to have to go to the post office with us and stay in the car, or go to the grocery store with us and stay in the car, particularly given how dangerous it is.
On Tuesday, Dedham's Animal Control Department reported 5 dogs had been found left in cars. Red Sox try to avoid that 4-game sweep by the unbeaten Tampa Bay Rays today. First pitch 1:10. Already 78 degrees in Boston. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Rice University, where challenging convention, exploring new ideas, and making a positive impact is central to how they define unconventional wisdom. More at unconventional.rice.edu.
Rowdy, I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, as we do every Tuesday and every Friday. But we're here today on Wednesday because
it's Thursday too.
Is it Thursday?
Yeah.
Whoops.
Okay. Well, that's a hell of a start to the show.
Wrong
Can we
day.
start over, John, or
we're
is this
here
live?
On Thursday, because the mayor is going to be with us.
Oh my God.
Today.
We are doomed.
Okay, let's try to get the rest of this correct. We're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News and facebook.com/GBH News. And the mayor's going to be here at... I'm not going to go any further.
Right. I'm going to do the rest of the show by myself. Thank you. But Marjorie, it's very nice to see you, too.
Nice to see you, too, Jim.
So the mayor will be here at 12:30, which is what Marjorie meant to say, on Thursday, because Thursday is today, actually, is the day she'll be here. And tomorrow, which is what, Marjorie?
Tomorrow, I believe, is Friday.
Because it comes right after Thursday.
But I'm not sure.
Exactly. Well, Friday does come after Thursday, regardless.
Thank you.
And if that's the case, and I believe it is, the governor will be with us tomorrow at 1 o'clock, right back here at the Boston Public Library. Can I just say one more? I don't know if it's a programming note. We've gotten texts this morning already, people saying they know they can't come to the show today or tomorrow because all the marathon construction. The answer is you can come to the show despite the marathon construction. All the streets are open. They won't be next Monday, but they are today. So if you want to come to the show, and particularly you want to hear Mayor Wu, and tomorrow you want to come to the show, hear some music and talk to the governor, the streets are open and we are open. So
Jim,
please join us.
I just want to preempt you by pointing out that I am aware that Saturday, April 15th, is a very special day.
Right, and it comes after Friday.
That's
Is that
right.
your point?
That's
Thank
my
you.
point.
I appreciate it.
Okay, I'm on top of it.
This Saturday, which Marjorie was referencing, April 15th, will mark 100 days since Governor Healy took office. And before we speak with her tomorrow, which is Friday, on Ask the Governor, our next 3 guests have been speaking with the people she serves, residents from around the state, about the job she's done so far, what they'd like to see her prioritize going forward. It's part of a collaborative reporting effort here. Have your say, Governor Healy's agenda, with GBH, CAI, and NEPM. First up is Patrick Flannery. He's the Morning Edition host at CAI, and he's joining us on Zoom. Patrick, good to see you. Thanks so much for coming by.
Oh, it's an honor, Jim and Marjorie. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks.
Thank you very much for joining us. So let's start from sound from a woman that you talked to about her nightmarish commute to childcare on Cape Cod, Amanda McGonigal. Here she is.
In the summer, it was, a round trip of 3.5 hours. So productivity was kind of, nightmarish. And there were some days, like on Fridays, where the traffic would be too much, where I would just keep her home, in an effort to try to get more work done. Add to the list of things that you have to worry about while you're pregnant is getting on a wait list, 7 months before your kid's even born.
Oh, I guess she's gone. Anyway, Patrick, this is what you focused in on, the childcare disaster. That's not just on the Cape, but you focused in on Cape Cod. Tell us about Amanda and what else you discovered.
Well, it's not about only making childcare affordable for the parents, but it's more about making it worth it to even pursue as a career. I mean, right now we're losing providers in Massachusetts and across the nation as well. I mean, the Labor Department said, Middlesex and Norfolk County are among the worst in the nation when it comes to child care costs, something like $25,000 a year for a family. It's not tenable. And we could talk numbers all day long, but the bottom line is we're looking at a threatened industry right now. And not only is it enormously expensive for the families, we're losing the caregivers who want to enter the field but are throwing in the towel once they realize what the salary is. So, once they realize what the pay is, we were told by one organizer, they've heard from child care providers that they'll just go work at Dunkin' Donuts. They make more there.
And we should be clear. I know this is stating the obvious, but I think it bears stating just to reaffirm it. Amanda McGonigal, maybe her 3.5 hours is aberrational, but the dearth of available, affordable childcare is not an Amanda McGonigal problem. It's a problem for virtually every low and moderate income working family on the Cape and beyond.
That's right. And where Amanda was concerned, I mean, we're talking about a drive from Falmouth to Plymouth. And for those who aren't familiar with it, forget about the nightmarish scenario you encounter right now with the Sagamore Bridge and the construction happening there. What you've got is sometimes a 3-hour round trip in the summertime. It should be about an hour there and back. But to go off Cape, back on Cape, and do that twice in the same day is something she's dealt with. And I mean, we heard from her. She never knew when she got pregnant that, hey, let me go ahead and sign up for daycare because the wait list is 2 years.
You know, we're talking to Patrick Flannery, Morning Edition host at CAI, about some of his reporting. You know, Elizabeth Warren has notably said, and I love this line, maybe it was during her presidential campaign, childcare is infrastructure for families. But this is not just about low-income childcare workers, as you mentioned, Patrick, nor is it just about the families. Business groups are saying this is bad for business, and they quantify it according to your report, no?
They do. You know, the Taxpayer Foundation in Massachusetts found something like $2 billion just last year was lost in lost revenue, lost productivity, lost earnings, and this is because so many parents said, look, I got to stay home. I can't hack it at work and afford childcare. I mean, the state determined, we see it in the numbers themselves, that's the crisis point that Elizabeth Warren has referred to, and that's why she's been pushing this $10 a day proposal for half of families across the country. And if a family, argument's sake, in Massachusetts makes $130,000 and they have 2 kids, they would qualify for this. But, you know, $300 versus $3,000 a month sounds pretty good, but this is in the budget, it's earmarked. What will happen, I guess we'll just have to see.
Yeah, how much, I mean, we are hearing these stories over and over again on the Cape, as you focused on, but everywhere, as you mentioned. So what is the prospect of something actually being done relief-wise? What do you think?
Well, you know, there's a couple of schools of thought here. I mean, the Common Start Coalition, which has been active for some time around the state, which is a network of parents and providers, has been pushing this for some time. And now they've got the ear of lawmakers, specifically Sue Moran in our region here on the Cape, trying to push this forward. I mean, what you've got to do is make it affordable for the families, but also make sure you're getting grants there for the providers themselves to remain operational. And I mean, they're saying this is something that is going to take time. It's not going to be in the form of a check that you get in the mail, but just over time, more money sort of appearing and making itself known.
Patrick, thanks for your reporting and thanks for your time today. It's really good to see you. Hope to see you again.
Yeah,
thanks.
Thank you very, very much. That was Patrick Flannery. He is the Morning Edition host at CAI, and we're now going to be joined by Nancy Cohen.
We are. Before we join by Nancy, what day is today? I just want to clarify. What day is today?
I think I've got it straight, Jim. Today's Thursday.
Thursday. I just wanted to confirm.
Thursday, yeah.
Joining us, as Marjorie said, on Thursday is Nancy Cohen. Nancy's a senior reporter for New England Public Media. Nancy, it's great to meet you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Marjorie and Jim, for having me on the show.
Our pleasure.
Well, thank you for alerting me to something that I knew absolutely nothing about, this whole issue of tree cutting on state land and what's going on, and that Maura Healey's campaign included reference to what she was going to do about tree cutting, which I didn't know about either. So fill us in, Nancy.
Well, when Maura Healey was running for governor, she pledged to put a moratorium on tree cutting on public lands, and then to figure out the best way to use state forests, state land, to address climate change. And the issue is complicated because there's science involved, and the science is complicated. So our forests sequester carbon during photosynthesis, and they also store it after they've sequestered it. And carbon is also stored in wood. So the idea is, can we offset some of our emissions by not cutting trees and store and sequester it in our forests? And when I did my reporting, I found that there were several stakeholders with really passionate views and different perspectives.
Well, let's hear from one of them with a not surprising perspective. This is logger Ken Conkey discussing how a moratorium on commercial tree cutting on state forests, as we just heard, is affecting his work.
Right now, there's absolutely nothing going on. All the jobs are on hold. Nobody's going to do a thing until there's a decision on the moratorium, I guess.
There is no moratorium officially right now.
Officially, no. But reality is, yes, there is a moratorium right now.
So what's going on in the Healey administration while this de facto but not formal moratorium is in place, Nancy?
The Healey administration hasn't spoken to me about what they're doing, but I can tell you this. I've spoken with Jonathan Thompson. He's research director and senior ecologist at Harvard Forest, part of Harvard University. He's done a lot of research for the state. And as I asked him my questions, he said, your questions remind me some of the questions that the state is asking him. So he says the state has gone to him to try to understand the science. They're really trying to think it through, he said. So my understanding from him is that they are researching it, asking questions.
You know, Nancy Cohen, senior reporter for New England Public Media, NEPM, it's expected, I don't mean this in a disparaging way, obviously loggers whose livelihoods depend on it want the moratorium, the de facto moratorium to end. Climate activists, you explained quite well, are on the other side of this thing. You also spoke to, maybe let me call it a third constituency, those who are concerned about wildlife and those sort of things. And at least from my perspective, knowing very little about this, they had sort of a counterintuitive, for me at least, position. Fill us in, if you would.
Okay, so there are wildlife species, there are birds in particular who need what's called early successional habitat, the kind of landscape that grows up after you cut trees, shrubs and small trees, saplings. They need it to nest, they need it to breed, to do some of their mating rituals, to thrive. And so we have bird species that are declining that need this. And so wildlife biologists that I spoke to feel that it is okay and good to manage some of the forests to create this habitat. And they also point out that the state foresters who, decide what trees are going to get cut do it carefully. Another thing that I learned from someone at the Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs is that well under 1% of our state forests are currently managed or cut.
Really?
The other thing that I learned from your reporting is this idea that if you have trees too thick, the sun doesn't get through. And that's, that can be an issue too, which is something I had never thought of, but it makes sense.
Well, people that consider themselves pro-foresters that do not want the forest cut say the best thing to do is to leave them alone. That's the best way to address climate change and to take care of our forests. And others say if we thin out some of the older trees and some of the canopy, younger trees will get the light so that they can grow.
So one last question for me. Are the climate activists ready to strangle those people, the wildlife people, who I assume they would think would be on their side, who are not? Is there tension between the groups?
I don't know that there's tension, but I think there's clearly disagreement. The wildlife biologists that I spoke to are firmly against a moratorium, and the folks that are concerned about climate change and pro-forest are saying we need to have a moratorium and stop cutting trees.
One thing I hope will come out of reporting like yours, though, is remember we had the big controversy on Melny-Cass Boulevard when Marty Walsh wanted to chop down all these really old trees
right in his face,
that line the boulevard.
That.
And people have said then, and you hear this all the time, Nancy, well, we're going to replace them with new trees. But of course, the new trees are these little skinny things, and it takes them forever, 100 years or so, to get to the. I mean, that is a given now, right? That the idea of chopping down these old trees and replacing them with these little trees is not the way to go in terms of environmental concerns.
Well, there are different thoughts about this. I mean, some folks say don't cut the trees, that's the way to go. If you do cut older trees and you have younger trees grow up instead, the younger trees will sequester carbon. If we're concerned about climate change, they will sequester carbon faster, but it will take many, many decades for the younger trees to older trees.
Nancy Cohen, we really appreciate your time. Thanks so much, and your reporting.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you very much. That was, again, Nancy Cohen, senior reporter for New England Public Media.
By the way, let me just say one last thing about the thing you asked Melny-Cass. There are issues of racial and other kinds of equity issues there. That's not just climate. Well, it is climate stuff. It's hotter. in neighborhoods where
With
there is
no
not
trees.
tree cover and all that sort of stuff. So you know how I know who our next guest is?
Because she's sitting
she
right
just
next to
rose.
us.
No, she's no longer sitting.
She's
she
standing.
rose
Okay.
to the occasion. We shall see. Joining us in person at the library is GBH's State House reporter, Katie Lannon. How are you, Katie?
I'm doing great. I'm glad to be here with you guys and with everyone else here at the library.
We're glad to have you.
Thank you very much for coming down. So you have done some great reporting on these people that are caregivers, mainly the family members. They are unpaid and they are really drowning. Let's hear when we at the start here from Allie Harris. She's talking about the strain of full-time caregiving for her husband.
And it's just me and him. What am I supposed to do? I used to joke, has anybody got some Navy SEALs?
Oh, God.
You know, like, who can you send in?
Tell us the story that got that quote when her husband was under a door, I guess. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, Allie Harris is someone who wrote in through our Have Your Say project to tell us about the burdens facing unpaid caregivers. She cared for her husband who had a progressive form of dementia at the end of his life, and she has mobility issues herself. She uses a walker. He became agitated at one point, pulled a door down onto himself, and she, recalled having to crawl across the floor to get it off of him and help him get back stable. She's the only person there to do it when it's just the two of them in their condo, and that really is one particular instance that illustrates a broader concern that people raise, that there is no help for people who are in this situation of taking care of an aging parent, a spouse who's come down with dementia, a disabled child, any number of possibilities.
This is a really painful story. And for those of you listening to this woman, and as painful and sympathetic as her individual story is, you cite some stunning number. What is it?
Gosh.
200,000 or something people who are dealing with someone with dementia or Alzheimer's?
Right.
Fill in the blanks
That's
for me.
Alzheimer's. Caregivers for loved ones with Alzheimer's or other forms of dementia, and the number of unpaid caregivers for other reasons across the state is even larger, in the hundreds of thousands, and we're talking about millions of hours worth of unpaid care.
And it's sort of a double-edged, horrible sword, because you go on to report, Katie Lannon, that not only is there a shortage of paid people to do these things, even if they existed, there's so many people who can't afford to hire the paid people, so they are really boxed in the most horrible of ways.
Right. It's very similar to the childcare issue that we've also been talking about today, in that there are low-paying jobs and labor shortages, and people can't always pay for or access the care they need. In some cases, people are leaving or cutting back their hours to manage a loved one's care, even if it's just making doctor's appointments during business hours.
One of the most important things, we've had a similar discussion with Paul Revel, former Secretary of Education, about problems, working your way through the complexities of the school system. One of the people with whom you spoke, I think, said, what we need is like a navigator. We need a one-stop kind of person, because the notion that a person who is burdened already by the illness or incapacity of someone they really love has to work these systems that are so unconsumer friendly for the most part. Is there any progress on the notion that there would be a single entry point, and that navigator, for lack of a better expression, would help people in need work their way through the system?
Yeah, it's not something that I've seen rise to kind of the top of the heap of an action item on Beacon Hill, but it is something that people I spoke to were looking for, just a place of, where do I start once I take on this role of caregiver?
But Beacon Hill, which we badmouth almost every day, is actually doing something, both in the Healy's budget, from what I understand, the governor's, and in the House budget, just released a couple of days ago, yes?
In their tax relief plans.
Yeah, tell us what they're doing.
Yeah, the governor is proposing a $600 credit per dependent for people caring for young children, adults with disabilities, or seniors. And that is an idea that the House has incorporated into its tax plan. Little different approach. They want to phase it in over multiple years instead of the full amount. And the governor, when she presented this plan to lawmakers, really brought with her people who are having the experience of caring for a parent or a child with disabilities, who talked about what kind of a difference, when you're talking about, in the grand scheme of things, $600 isn't going to cover all your expenses. But their point of view was both A, every little bit helps, and B, we want to know that government is paying attention to us and our needs.
Mm-hmm. when I read stories like yours and the childcare story that Patrick was talking about earlier, I think we are so unusual compared to the other developed countries in the world. I mean, there's kind of you're on your own sense in the United States of America that other countries don't have, and we are really bad.
I think another thing that complicates the dynamic too here in Massachusetts is that we do have a rapidly aging population, and there's a demographic shift that's going to really bring a lot of these questions to the forefront.
Yeah, because people are going to be living to 80 and 90, and they're going to be nobody to take care of them. So let's talk about the governor. This whole first 100 days thing. This is the mark of how's she doing the first 100 days. So what's the sense of how she's doing the first 100 days, Katie Lannon?
Well, here on day, I guess, 98 or so, we've seen a lot of the administrative work of setting up her administration. And that includes hiring staff. And some of these are items that speak to priorities that the governor has laid out and that people have written in to us and say they want attention to. That includes hiring a new MBTA general manager, making moves to appoint a dedicated housing secretary, and bringing in a climate chief for her administration. So we've seen a lot of the setup work. She's really been touting her tax plan and her budget proposals, and we'll kind of see where things go from there with those ideas.
You know, in all fairness to her, we try to be as fair as possible. The fact that she's been here 98 days, and to my knowledge, please correct me if I'm wrong, no one has had to jump from the orange line into the Mystic, is great progress.
Yeah.
You know, you made a really interesting observation to Jamie, our colleague, when you were talking to him this morning, is that Charlie Baker, about a minute and a half before he took over, had an opportunity to prove his mettle to everybody in the state when we had these colossal storms. We had the Long March, those great photographs in the Globe and elsewhere, when the subways shut down. She really has gotten through 98 days without that sort of competence testing crisis, even a mini crisis. You could say the T has been a problem here and there. Is that, flesh that out a little bit for me if you can.
Yeah, the MBTA, I think you're right in just that you can say there's a crisis, but it hasn't been a single point of emergency in the same way. And when Charlie Baker came in, the state was also staring down a budget deficit.
That's a very good point,
too. He announced cuts right away. He had regulation reviews and all sorts of plans to tackle the financial difficulty. Deval Patrick's early tenure was kind of defined by some spending missteps that he made with his car and the office.
The Cadillac and the drapes.
Oh my God, the drapes. Those are huge.
Really ballooned into.
He loved when we brought that up with him, by the way. He really, Governor Patrick loved talking about that. So what do you think is you say she's done some setup things, basically created the infrastructure for her governorship, and I guess she has the freedom to do it because there's no single crisis that's confronting her, right?
Exactly, yeah. And I think you saw when Maura Healey was campaigning, she was really running on a message of continuing the things people were happy with under Charlie Baker. And, generally in polls, Massachusetts residents tend to be happier with the state than the country as a whole. So I think she does kind of have that honeymoon period to her advantage.
Well, the one thing, you mentioned this too, the tax cut thing. I was stunned that a tax cut was the centerpiece for a campaign at the same time that she's endorsing a huge increase in taxes on people who make more than $1 million a year. And I guess you have to say she sort of has delivered on the tax cut thing. Not only did she put it in her budget, but a very similar plan with some modifications was reported out of the House of Representatives. Obviously, is one step to go with the Senate. But she, at least as much as she can do, she's honoring a pledge that I think most people will remember from Campaign Healey.
Absolutely, and of course the legislature, by not finishing a tax bill last year, gave her the window to do this. And it's worth noting also that her tax relief ideas aren't universally well received. There's people including people who wrote into us and to have your say, that they question the balance, whether it's going to really help working people struggling here in Massachusetts.
Can I ask one more question about the tax cut before you?
Sure.
And I had a thesis, totally unproven and probably totally ridiculous, that the legislature, and you're up there all the time, so you'd have a better sense, the legislature purposely denied, we asked Baker about this and he wouldn't say what he thought, but I think he agreed. They purposely denied him the tax cut so they could give it to a fellow Democrat. when she took over. Don't give it to the Republican, give it to the Democrat. Is that absurd hypothesis on my part?
I mean, you're definitely not the first person I've heard raise that theory. For, what lawmakers say when you ask them about it is kind of along the same lines of what Charlie Baker said, is that, no, it was our real economic concerns.
We're talking to Katie Lannon. She is the GBH State House reporter. When Jim introduced you, he talked about this collaborative effort GBH is doing, this Have Your Say, Governor Healey's agenda, talking to people around the state about what they'd like to see her prioritize. And we talked about, childcare. We talked about elder care or taking care of people that have some kind of disability, the tree cutting thing. What else rose to the top of what people are talking about? You mentioned taxes, but what other kind of things?
I think it's things that really wouldn't surprise you. It's things like the cost of everything, whether it's electricity to health insurance premiums. Housing costs are a real big pain point for a lot of people, it seems like, including a 68-year-old homeowner in Belchertown who says they have to choose between eating and paying their mortgage. Childcare costs, the combination of housing and childcare costs, clean water on Cape Cod. There's a lot of specific issues, I think, that affect people's day-to-day lives rather than big, lofty, no one has a big policy agenda that's like, these are the exact bills the governor should file or act on. But people want to see government, paying attention to the things that make their lives harder.
Yeah, they're really worried on the Cape about the water coming out of the nuclear power plant in Plymouth that could go right into Cape Cod Bay, but that's not even resolved yet, I don't think.
No, that's an ongoing process.
It seems like a good idea not to put a bunch of radioactive water into Cape Cod Bay. I could be wrong, but I guess we're still fighting over this.
So, Katie, a follow-up to Marjorie's thing, and I know this is anecdotal because you didn't do some scientific poll, even though all these people responded to, again, as Marjorie said, Have Your Say, Governor Healey's agenda. Did there seem to be general satisfaction with the early days of their new governor? Can you draw a judgment based upon what you and your colleagues heard?
Yeah, I mean, I think just from some of the entries I've scanned, there are plenty of people who say, she knows this stuff. We just have to see her and the legislature act on it.
What is, let me give you another thesis based on nothing. The legislature didn't treat the Bob Patrick terribly well. And my analysis, I think you shared this, is legislative leaders who are always Democrats don't like having a Democrat in the corner office because he or she is the bigger fish in the pond.
Or outshines them, Jim, which wouldn't be difficult, really, when you consider the legislature. That should be our next poll.
That's not nice.
It's the legislature.
So, in your time observing these people, do you find some truth in that, as they like to be the top Democrats, and there is some sort of, I don't even know what the proper nomenclature is, there's some sort of, when people fear that there's going to be this rush to legislate because they're all Democrats, they're generally wrong. And I think they're wrong because there's some hesitancy on the part of the leadership to allow a fellow Democrat, as I say, to be the bigger fish. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think there are power dynamics at play differently. When you have a Republican governor, there's a natural kind of counterpoint to his agenda or what the legislature might want to do. But here, it's really a matter of who can sell their priorities best and first and who's rise to the top. And that's where you really get into the kind of inter-party wrangling. Everyone, they're all Democrats, as you say, but they each have their own issues that they want to tackle first, whether it's the House, the Senate, or the governor.
Well, one of the issues the legislators really want to tackle, we talk about it all the time, is can they extend the 5-month vacation that they have. Katie can't speak to this because she's a real reporter as opposed to irresponsible people like me and Marjorie. Let me repeat that, a 5-month vacation.
Well, sometimes
in
if
an
you spend
election
some
year.
time at the State House, it's really interesting when you see the House leader or the Senate leader come down the hallway. It's like the carpet, the water spreads in front of them.
Your
like
Excellency.
It's Moses going across the water or something like that. The red carpet. Sometimes I think it may go to their heads just a little tiny bit.
Katie, your reporting was great. This whole project was great, and we thank you and your colleagues for being with us today. It was terrific. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
You didn't say you were honored, like Patrick said. Are you honored to be with us?
Oh, I thought that was implied.
Okay, I just want to be clear.
Okay, all right.
We're glad to hear it. Thank you.
Speaking with GBH's Katie Lannon, CAI's Patrick Flannery, and New England Public Media's Nancy Cohen, and we thank everybody for coming in and speaking with us today. Thank you, particularly because you were here at the studio. We like that very
Katie.
much.
Appreciate it.
After a quick break, we're opening the phone and text lines to ask you another day, another alert to not visit Florida. So, school vacation just ended. We got another one coming up in April. Is it time, next week actually, is it time we put our money where our mouths are when it comes to the Sunshine State? Should we boycott Florida? That's next on 877 on GBH. 877-301-8970 is the number you can call us or text us at. You're listening to Boston Public Radio. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, and we are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News and facebook.com/GBH News.
Hi, I'm Tibisay Isaiah, host of the podcast Salud, a show in Spanish about Latinos' health.
Pocas personas han visitado el infierno y han regresado para contarlo. En el próximo episodio de Salud te contaremos la historia de 2 sobrevivientes de la adicción al fentanilo, una droga muy potente. Escúchalo este sábado a las 9:30 de la mañana por GBH. Listen this Saturday morning at 9:30 on GBH 89.7 o en tu plataforma de podcast favorita.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you and Mass General Brigham Health Plan, a health plan connected to a world-leading healthcare system, committed to providing innovative plans, coverage, and a broad network of doctors. Learn more at massgeneralbrighamhealthplan.org. And Walden Local Meat, 100% grass-fed and pasture-raised beef, pork, and chicken, and seafood from local farmers, hand-delivered to your door. Committed to supporting local food for communities. Membership options and more at waldenlocalmeat.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browning and Marjorie. And we're live at the Boston Public Library on, is today Monday, right? Today is Monday?
Today's Thursday, Jim.
Thursday, I'm sorry.
Fooled
Today
me
on
once.
Thursday.
Can't be fooled again.
Right. One of the great George Bush quotes ever. Google it. Check it out. One of the funniest things in history.
I can't really complain.
No, I think you can.
Given my problems.
Well, you're not president. Streaming at youtube.com/GBH News and facebook.com/GBH News. Can you pull that soundbite, by the way, even though it has nothing to do? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me
twice.
George W. In any case, Ask the Mayors at 12:30. Mayor Wu will join us from 12:30 to 1:30. And yes, you can get into the library despite all the wonderful marathon construction. Tomorrow at 1 o'clock, Governor Healy joins us for an hour of Ask the Governor, both at the Boston Public Library. And we are at the library today, even though it's a Thursday. So yesterday afternoon, an organization called Equality Florida, that's the largest LGBTQ advocacy group in the state, issued an advisory for queer visitors and potential queer identifying residents. Their message, don't come here. Our question for you is, should the rest of us heed their warning? This advisory follows, as I'm sure you know, years of anti-LGBTQ legislative efforts championed by their governor, Ron DeSantis. There's the bill they passed to stifle acknowledgement of queer people in schools, the so-called Don't Say Gay bill, which they're working to expand into older grades. I think you know this. The state Senate just yesterday passed a bill that could make it illegal for drag performers to appear in public spaces over fears they might be seen by children. The latest advisory is on top of a recent one from the NAACP on not traveling to Florida. That's based in part, at least, on the decision by DeSantis and his people to not recognize advanced placement courses. This is unbelievable. In African American studies, immigration groups point to the involuntary flying of people to Martha's Vineyard. New gun laws where you can carry concealed weapons without a permit or training. We want to hear your thoughts at 877-301-8970. Are you someone who says enough is enough? I'm not going to make that trip south, either out of principle or because you actually fear some real harassment, or is the allure of warm weather, sandy beaches, I don't know, Disney World too much to overcome? Give us a call, 877-301-8970. 8970. This was your idea, and I have to say, I want to compliment you.
Well, I know why it wasn't your idea.
The notion of boycotting Florida, if you put your money where your mouth is, I totally support it.
Absolutely. And I would like to point out that most of this was going on a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
Where were you a couple of weeks ago?
I was in Florida.
That's right.
But Marjorie, that was
not only in
before.
Florida.
Now, let me be clear.
He was like a few yards from Mar-a-Lago.
Maybe I was. Now, let me just say this. That was
you got
before.
A free weekend.
Had you called for a boycott at that particular stage? You had not. Had you, I, of course, would not have gone, even though I had free housing.
Okay.
877-301-8970. In a moment of seriousness here, you know, it is totally, until you said it this morning, It is totally true. Virtually every vulnerable group of people in this country have been targeted by this guy. And our position is, let's go there,
and
make more money for the economy,
Exactly.
keep people who are apparently okay with this because they voted for this guy. And I think it's a wonderful idea to say, put your money and your travel plans where your heart and principles are. Don't go.
I mean, how many people do you know that when they retire, they go retire in Florida, or they just go for winter vacations to Florida? People go to Disney World all the time. A lot of people around here go to Naples. That's a big popular spot.
I didn't know that.
Friends of mine go to Fort Myers. My cousin who went to Fort Myers a while ago, she's done it for years, talked about how she was in tears going down to see what the hurricanes have done to the shoreline at Fort Myers. It broke her heart. And of course, Ron DeSantis is not really on the climate change bandwagon in any big kind of way, is he? No, I think
that's
not.
Too woke for him, climate change. Can I do one thing before we get to the calls and texts? Lines filled up in 10 seconds. This has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but since Margie referenced it, here's one of the great sound bites of all time. This is George W. Bush. Here he is with the age-old adage about getting fooled. This is in Nashville in September of 2002.
There's an old saying in Tennessee, I know it's in Texas, probably in Tennessee, that says, fool me once, shame on you. It fooled me, we can't get fooled again.
You know what the beautiful thing about that is?
Oh, my God.
That is a statement that affirms the notion that even those who can't talk
can be president.
And I might be one of them, can be a talk show host, or they can be president of the United States. I think it's a wonderful thing.
Okay,
a wonderful thing.
Nothing to do with what we're talking about. We're talking about Marjorie's notion, which I subscribe to, is should we be boycotting Florida when they continue to treat our fellow humans like Ron DeSantis does?
Listen to this. My husband and I were looking for a place to spend the winter months. Instead of leaving $1 in Florida, we drove across the country to California with a 120-pound dog to go to a blue state. I sent an email to the Chamber of Commerce in Florida to let them know. No response.
Fabulous. Molly in West Newbury, you're first on Boston Public Radio. Thank you much for calling. Hi.
Hi. I've been going to Florida since the 70s. I was married in Florida. I have family in Florida. And I hope I never see the state again, barring a funeral. I feel we should be using our money to support states and politicians' beliefs that further our country as opposed to set us back into the Handmaid's Tale.
God,
hell
good
of
for
a first
you,
call,
Molly, because you've got a
great.
real attachment to it, a sentimental attachment to it. Good for you.
Thanks, Molly.
That's
You know what
great.
we left out of this? Book bans.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Remember our Michelangelo discussion, obviously inspired by Ron DeSantis, that statue, the most famous arguably in the world, is pornography, according to some people in charge.
Did you mention
in that particular
New
school
College?
system.
No,
mention New College.
Yeah, there's a college down there that he's basically taken over. He wants to, they're kind of like a Sarah Lawrence College or something, kind of a progressive college. He's taken it over so we can turn it into like a Christian-type college for the students that have already paid money to go there. He's stuck his appointees into big positions for that place to change the school.
But did you see was it Mount Holyoke's president? I think it was Mount Holyoke who offered admission at the exact same cost of New College, even though it's lower than Mount
fantastic.
Holyoke. I think it's Mount Holyoke. Please check so I'm not making a mistake. By the way, do you know who's standing right there?
No, I don't.
Greatest baker in the world, Joanne Chang. Hello, Joanne. It's nice to see you. How are you?
There she is.
Let's go to Tom in Boston. You're next on Boston Public Radio. Hey, Tom. Hey, Tom.
I think it might be Tom in Gloucester.
That's what I meant, Tom in Gloucester.
We're close.
How are you, Tom?
We're close.
What's up?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Good, thank you.
So I am a 60-year-old gay man. I've been married to my husband for 26 years. We are incredibly privileged people, and I would never consider moving to Florida at this point with Ron DeSantis. I don't even know where to begin. You know, my mother is 84. I fly down there every 12 weeks to check on her. She basically was locked in her apartment for 2 years because she has such terrible health problems that if she gets COVID, she will die. And by the way, my father did die of it.
Oh, my God.
Oh, sorry.
I think that Ron DeSantis has done such a disservice to so many people, and I think he should be held accountable. In my opinion, he's a mass murderer because of all the lies that he told relative to COVID. But aside from that, you know, as a gay man, I don't feel safe in Gloucester. I certainly would never hold my husband's hand in public. You know,
wow.
That's something that's reserved. That's something that's reserved for Provincetown. But one last thing I'll say is, my mother and I have had many, many discussions about us leaving the country while we can still get out, while we're still desirable to other countries, because we have a lot of money, because we're not going to be a drain on their society. But she's comparing this to Hitler. That the smart Jews were the ones that got out when they saw the writing on the wall, and they could.
Well, that is a really painful
Wow.
call, Tom, but we're really glad you were kind enough to share your thoughts with us. Good luck to your mother and to you and your husband. Thank you for the call. Wow.
A lot of us have friends down there, and I have a particular friend down there that's been there since the 70s. Her parents, Canadians, they bought a place down there years ago in Sarasota, which you think of as kind of a forward kind of place. They're Jewish, and they have felt very uneasy with the growing sense of anti-Semitism. And that is, from her childhood going there, and that was not true for decades, and it's true now. It's really scary. Dee in someplace in Massachusetts. Hi, Dee.
Welcome, Dee.
Hi, how are you today?
We're good, thank you.
I love your show.
Thank
I
you.
was just listening to Tom, and I have to say I agree with Tom. I bought a house in 2010 in Florida in Inglewood, and I sold it in 2020 because of COVID. I'm in my 70s and have a lot of autoimmune disorders and thought, this is not safe. I was in a drugstore with a mask on, and several people were yelling at me, why am I wearing a mask?
Oh.
So I sold my house and left. But I will say in my time there, I have never run into such racist, bigoted people in my life. I am Catholic. I don't believe in abortion for me, but I would never impose my will on somebody else. I have the right for my feelings, and like everybody else, they should, if they want to, they can. If they want to wear a mask, they should. But to ban books, I'm a reader. I did not graduate, and I have educated myself by reading. And I cannot understand in our time why somebody would go back all of this to the 40s and 50s of being such racist state and banning books. Like Tom said, they're becoming like Hitler's.
Dee, thank you, too, for your honest call. When Dee mentioned the mask thing, you know where that comes from? It's not just the fact that Ron DeSantis has a state surgeon general who is a total COVID denier. One of the scenes of DeSantis that I found the most offensive, he's about to speak. I forget if it was a high school or a community college. There are 4 young men, teenagers, I believe, all wearing masks. And he gratuitously, because he knew the camera was on, before he spoke, walked over to them and started criticizing these young kids for their performative behavior. You don't have to wear a mask. Don't do that kind of thing. Basically embarrassing these kids in front of a camera because it fit his bullying ways.
And he had no idea whether those young men might have had, teenagers might have had a mother or grandmother or somebody living at home with cancer surgery or an autoimmune disorder. By the way, this is a good time to bring out the disgraceful situation over at Harvard University, where they have just accepted a $300 million gift from this hedge fund guy, Ken Griffin, who's supporting Ron DeSantis, the governor we're talking about, for president. And the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences now is going to carry this guy Griffin's name. They have a great quote in this Globe story from a first-year Harvard student who's took this semester off to advocate for students' rights in Florida. Here's what this student, Xander Maurice, said. What's unacceptable about this is forcing queer students, students of color, and trans students to learn in a school named after someone who pays money to fund legislation that puts their lives at risk and someone whose political activity jeopardizes their existence and quality of life.
Really a powerful...
So Harvard, I don't know what's wrong across the river there in your town, Cambridge.
Well, the Sackler name is still on buildings over there,
Sackler name
too.
is still on buildings, and they're going to name a building after this guy that is spending money to help Ron DeSantis become the president of the United States.
So I want to make clear, again, I did not go to Florida after Marjorie called for the boycott.
Yeah,
I only
Jim
went
was
to
down.
Florida before...
That's right. Jim flew to spend 4 or 5 glorious days down there.
days, 3.5 days.
It's right next to Mar-a-Lago. Did you actually go to Mar-a-Lago and have dinner over there, Jim?
No, I did not. I did drive by. I did rear end a pickup truck as I was driving by. But that was it. We got to take a break, Marjorie.
We do have to take a break.
Yes, we do.
Okay. We're talking about whether or not we should be boycotting Florida at this particular junction, since they've picked on almost everybody possible that they can pick on down there in marginalized communities, and it's kind of a disgrace. More of your calls next, 877-301-8970. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, broadcasting live.
World, Iraq's October protest movement, known there as the Tishreen protests, they were the largest social movement in the country's recent history. It began in 2019 with protesters calling for an end to corruption, demands for more job opportunities, and better living conditions. We learned about one man who paid a heavy price for taking part. His story on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you and the Boston Speakers Series, announcing its upcoming season at Symphony Hall for 7 evenings, featuring Jane Fonda, Van Jones, former Ukraine Ambassador Marie Yovanovitch, and Dr. Laurie Santos of the Happiness Lab. Info at bostonspeakers.org. And the Rappaport Foundation, hosting a virtual panel discussion, The Future is Female, Empowering Women to Run for Office, April 20th at 12 noon. You can learn more and register at rappaportfoundation.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marge Regan. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News and facebook.com/GBH News. In 40 minutes, the mayor will join us, 12:30 to 1:30, taking your calls and questions. Tomorrow at 1, we're at the library. Tomorrow at 1, we're back at the library. The governor joins us, Maura Healey, from 2 to 3. If you're just joining us, Marjorie's suggestion this morning was, if you're concerned about a string of anti-LGBTQ, anti-people of color, anti-immigrant, pro-gun moves by the governor of Florida, who apparently any day is about to announce his candidacy for the presidency, then why go there? Why spend your money there? Marjorie's calling for a boycott, and I think she's doing the right thing. The number's 877-301-8970 for calls or texts.
Of course, it's not exactly difficult for me. I don't really go to Florida on a regular
basis. You were in Florida a year or so ago.
Yeah, I was, just in Sarasota.
So would you go if those friends invited you now? Hello?
I think probably not.
Did you not hear me?
No, I probably wouldn't. I was invited this year.
Oh, you were?
Yes, I was.
And did you turn them down?
No, I didn't go.
Okay, fine.
Listen,
but did you turn them down?
I said I'm not coming.
Oh.
I said I'm not coming.
Why?
Because I didn't want to go to Florida.
Oh,
great. Really, I didn't want to go to Florida.
Great.
Tony from Holden. It says, sell your Florida winter home right now to some climate-denying MAGA wackadoodle. That state will be underwater soon, which is a very good point. You know, some of the leaders down there, Marco Rubio, DeSantis, the guy that's a senator now, Rick Scott, climate change deniers.
Remember when he was governor?
Miami floods all the time.
Tell people when Rick Scott was governor what he ordered.
You could not mention the words climate change in any state document.
Is that unbelievable?
In Florida. Talk about a total denial. What's really sad, too, is a lot of these people that lost their homes were people that, were living in trailers. They were not necessarily rich people on the waterfront. They were people who couldn't afford the insurance, the flood insurance, couldn't afford to rebuild their homes, and they've lost them. Listen to this. This is from Karina in Belmar. Our family was talking about a family vacation in Florida, but it's been banned now, especially now the governor wants to criminalize U.S. citizens if you are caught driving, helping, housing, or otherwise doing anything for someone who is in the country. It came here illegally. So we are going to be supporting only blue states.
Wow. Paul in a car. Welcome to the show, Paul. Thank you for calling.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
I just kind of find it a little bit ironic that we kind of pontificate on, boycotting Florida and everything. But do we really take that seriously? I mean, Jim, you just said you went down to Florida.
I did.
Disgraceful, Paul. Absolutely.
Disgraceful. It's not. It is a reality. And the other issue is...
Wait, let's stop there for a second, Paul. If you listen to the first 20 minutes of the show, where virtually every single caller, including ones with deep ties to Florida, have said they won't go. Yep. So I may be a hypocrite. They're not hypocrites.
they're not hypocrites, and I found Tom's story very.
It was really powerful.
Very. I liked it a lot, and I do feel bad for that. But again, would we be ready for any repercussions with a boycott of Massachusetts from Florida?
Well, that's like saying then you should never take action against anybody or anything for fear, no matter how venal. Well, I'm answering your question. Would we be concerned about it? The answer is, if you're concerned about repercussions, then you should never take action against anything you find untoward, because it may come back at you. Hopefully all of us, including you and me, are better than that, Paul.
I was just raising the issue. I don't disagree with Marjorie. My problem is, I don't think people, and especially when you were talking about Harvard taking $300 million, as we all know, in the end, money talks. And
well, that's a good point.
If Florida was hurting from it, maybe they would respond. But
you know, Paul, with Harvard, the thing is, Harvard has so much money, they don't need this. I mean, what is their endowment? Like
$50 billion?
$50 billion?
It's close.
I mean, Harvard University will be fine without Ken Griffin's money. If it was some little struggling college, then I could say that's a different story. But there's no money issue here. You know?
But you say that, but obviously they think differently, or they wouldn't be taking it.
Well, you know, Paul, thanks for the call. You know, speaking of Harvard for a second, since it's slightly off topic, I mentioned in passing they refused to take the Sackler name off, and Larry Bacow, who's the outgoing president, said the reason was that Arthur Sackler, who donated the money in return for which they named a building, died before they started doing this opioid thing. Even if that is factually accurate, and I believe it is, the notion that he is so insensitive to the fact that a student may walk into a building with a Sackler name whose parent or sibling or best friend died because of the Sacklers' businesses.
Listen, it's like if you were black and you had to walk by statues of all these Confederate war heroes. I can't imagine how terrible that must have felt for years. And by the way, lots of people are saying the Red Sox should move spring training out of Florida. We talked about this before, I think, with Trini Casey saying that maybe all the baseball teams should get. Well, I guess they're not all in Florida.
But you know, he is all he cares. I mean, the fact that he was willing to take on, I would argue, maybe the most important entertainment thing
Disney.
in a state, Disney, and taken on fiercely and repeatedly suggests this is all just platforming. The goal is to create that key constituency that he needs to win a Republican nomination and let his own state be damned. Having said that, they voted. You know, he crushed Christie, Charlie Crist.
I know.
And so people knew what he was all about, which suggests the people of Florida themselves support what he's doing, don't you think?
Well, it does unfortunately look that way, which is why yet another reason why you shouldn't go there. Corey from Somerville, thank you for calling.
You only have 30 seconds, Corey.
Oh, sorry, we're almost out of time.
Shoot.
Me?
Well, if you're Corey, yes. Who are you?
Yes, okay, sorry. I'm Corey, I'm calling from Somerville.
Hi, 30 seconds.
I just wanted to say, I have parents that live in Florida. I will not visit them.
Wow. Jesus.
I underwent an abortion for medical reasons in the second trimester in 2021. If I lived in Florida at the time that happened, I would have been forced to carry to term.
Wow.
Corey,
hey, in 10 seconds, do your parents know about this or no?
I'm sorry?
Do your parents know you're not coming?
Oh, yes, I have told them. They've asked repeatedly, and I have refused.
You are a person of principle. Corey, thank you for the call. We appreciate it. Thanks so much.
I thank you very much for all the calls and texts. Sorry we couldn't get to them all. But coming up after the new news, we're going to talk with former Suffolk County Sheriff Andrew Cabral about a bunch of things, including this big crusader for children. No drag shows, no books, no nothing. What happens to him? He gets caught serving liquor to an underage intern. That's next on Boston Public Radio.
You're listening to Boston Public Radio with Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. Just ahead, more smart conversation about what's going on in our community. That's right after an NPR news break, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you and Boston Ballet, presenting Our Journey, featuring La Mer, a world premiere about ocean preservation by choreographer Nanine Lenning, and Justin Peck's Everywhere We Go, on stage starting April 6th. BostonBallet.org. At the height of the Troubles, a tight-knit, rebellious community of surf pioneers hosted the 1972 Eurosurf Championship and transcended hostilities. Watch Dock World, Keep It a Secret, tonight at 9 on GBH2.
I'm Nightside News anchor Mary Blake, and you and I are listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR, what matters to you.
I'm Jim Browdy, head on Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library. Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg is suing Trump-supporting House Judiciary Committee Chair Jim Jordan to stop interfering in the case against the former president. We'll get updates on that, the latest abortion pill ruling, and more from Andrea Cabral.
Boston Mayor Michelle Wu joins us for Ask the Mayor here at the Boston Public Library. We'll ask about her budget, Marathon Monday, the 10-year anniversary of the bombings, and you can ask her whatever you like at 877-301-8970. All that ahead on the Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. We're learning that the Justice Department is seeking emergency relief from the U.S. Supreme Court in a Texas case involving limited access to the abortion drug mifepristone. Last night, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit ruled that mifepristone, which is in the U.S. used in most medication abortions and to treat miscarriages, is approved for use up to 7 weeks of pregnancy during the appeals process, but could no longer be dispensed by mail. This was a dial back from the previous approval of up to 10 weeks and access to the prescribed medication through the mail. Lawyers for the Biden administration had previously asked the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals for an emergency stay on a lower court's injunction ruling that was slated to go into effect tomorrow and would block the FDA's approval of mifepristone. The Department of Justice's lawyers argue that the district court upended decades of reliance by blocking FDA's approval of mifepristone and depriving patients of access to the safe and effective treatment based on the court's own misguided assessment of the drug's safety, that according to the DOJ's attorneys. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer will move next week for a new Democrat to be installed on the Judiciary Committee. NPR's Claudia Grisales reports Senator Dianne Feinstein, the veteran lawmaker from California who's been on an extended absence, says she's giving up her seat on the powerful panel for now.
In a statement, Feinstein said she's suffering from complications tied to a case of shingles. The 89-year-old has missed dozens of Senate votes, more than a month's time, and initially thought she could return to Washington by the end of last month. Now, in response to critics, she's asked Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer to replace her temporarily with another Democrat on the Senate Judiciary Committee. The panel is charged with confirming federal judges and hopes to hold a hearing soon on ethical concerns surrounding the Supreme Court. At least two House Democrats, led by California's Ro Khanna, are asking for Feinstein's resignation. Claudia Grisales, NPR News, Washington.
Early sign of softening in the U.S. job market. NPR's Scott Horsley says a number of people applying for unemployment benefits ticked up last week.
Some 239,000 people filed new applications for unemployment benefits last week. That's the largest number of new jobless claims in 15 months. It points to an increase in layoffs, although the overall job market remains tight. Wholesale prices fell last month thanks in part to a drop in energy prices. The producer price index declined by 0.5% between February and March. Falling gasoline prices also contributed to last month's drop in retail inflation, but now prices at the pump are climbing again. AAA reports the average price of unleaded regular gas is nearly $3.65 a gallon. That's up 9 cents from a week ago and 17 cents higher than this time last month. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
It's NPR.
Good afternoon from the GBH Radio Newsroom in Boston. I'm Henry Santoro. Commuters to and from the South Coast to Boston got some good news today. Peter Pan bus lines will begin running buses from New Bedford to Boston to replace the canceled DATCO commuter buses. According to State Rep Tony Cabral, DATCO service is scheduled to end this Sunday, and the Peter Pan buses will start on Tuesday, just after the Patriots' Day holiday. He calls it the best solution, and he also calls it great news. For now, there'll only be one bus in the morning and one in the afternoon, and if there's enough demand, more buses will be added. And unlike the DATCO buses, the Peter Pan buses will also stop at Logan Airport in addition to the South Station stop in Boston. Former Boston Police Commissioner Bill Evans among the tens of thousands of runners getting ready for Monday's Boston Marathon. It'll be Evans's 24th time across the finish line on Boylston Street. He tells GBH News that Boston is the marathon of choice for runners around the world. He also says he has powerful memories of the race 10 years ago when those bombs went off.
Support for NPR comes from NPR.
I've been feeling a lot of anxiety, which I never have, but, I keep seeing, the news coverage, and it doesn't bring back good memories when you start talking about what happened 10 years ago.
Evans had finished the race about an hour before the explosions. Red Sox Rays today at 1 o'clock. Red Hot Bruins wrap up the regular season tonight in Montreal. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fidelity Investments. A dedicated advisor can help create a wealth plan for a full financial picture. More at fidelity.com/wealth. Investment minimums apply. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC.
Rowdy, I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome back to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, as we do on Tuesdays and Fridays, but we're here today on Thursday because Mayor Wu is going to be with us shortly for another edition of Ask the Mayor. Hello again, Jim.
Hey there. Did you say we're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News and facebook.com/GBH News? But you can come on down here to see the mayor, even though it looks like you can't get in because all the marathon construction. Actually, we are open for business, and as Marjorie said, the mayor's with us in 24 minutes, and the governor's with us tomorrow, also at the Boston Public Library. Here right now is Andrea Cabral, former sheriff of Suffolk County, former secretary of public safety. Hello, Andrea.
Killing time until the real guests get
Filler,
here.
we call it, exactly.
I'm just filling in.
Thank you.
So as people may know, a federal court judge in Texas had blocked the FDA's approval of mifepristone, which is an abortion drug and part of a 2-part drug thing that is the most commonly used method of abortion in the early weeks in the country. Well, now we have another federal judge, the Federal Appeals Court, has preserved action to this drug, but it's really restricted the rules.
Yeah. This is I don't know which thing to be more furious about or furious about first. First of all, the underlying district court, the Kaczmarek decision from this district court judge who was appointed by Trump, it is, by pretty much every credible account, a ridiculous decision, in some parts based on outdated law, a complete usurpation of the authority of the FDA to decide what it will and will not approve. And so, of course, it goes to the Federal Appeals Court now. In this panel, there are 2 judges appointed by Trump and 1 appointed by George W. Bush. The narrowing of the FDA's rule is inexplicable to me. If their authority by Supreme Court decisions is well established in decision after decision, their authority to make these decisions, and you're looking at a decision that was made in violation of that, by the way, I should just say as an aside, I don't even know where the plaintiffs in the underlying case get their standing.
Yeah.
It's this Alliance for Freedom, which has some doctors associated with it, but none of them prescribe this drug. So I don't even know how they even got past the standing question, which tells you what a sloppy decision this is. But if ultimately you have this very high standard to approve or to meet before you overrule the authority of a federal agency like the FDA, how do you get to the point where you say, yes, the FDA has the authority to make these decisions, but we're going to narrow it because we think that some of the decisions they made subsequent to the initial decision, like enlarging the amount of time for which it could be available and using the mail in order for people to get it.
Which is a big deal.
They decided were less consequential.
Yeah.
That is still usurping the authority of the FDA, which takes the long view, which has a much better sense of what is consequential with regard to a particular medication and what is not. So,
well, I can answer your question. I mean, you can answer your question too. How could they do this? The answer is the lower court's decision, as you said, was so absurd. They had no choice, even though they would have liked to overturn it, or at least temporarily stay it, I should say. And at the same time, they said, we got to throw a bone to the people we love, the anti-reproductive freedom people. So let's make up some restrictions. I'm serious about this. Let's make up some restrictions.
Right. Well, the mail is a huge restriction because it means that women in states where abortion has been deemed illegal aren't going to be able to get these pills in the mail.
Can I say one more thing about this, just to expand what you said? This is not rare to overturn an FDA drug approval where the FDA opposes the revocation. It has never happened in history that there's been such a revocation, and the potential for this being a chilling effect on new drugs from other companies who fear they'll get approval in the short term but may get a revocation in the long term is actually scary.
Well, what tells you how political this is that in the original approval, the FDA did not want the drug to be mailed. They had actually prohibited that. They changed that
in 2016.
And when they originally said it could not be mailed, all of the anti-choice people in high places praised that decision because a case came up challenging that, and they said, no, that's one of the cases that establishes the FDA's authority. Now, they've literally, since the FDA changed its mind, are basically saying, no, the original decision that makes women go to the doctor's office to get this drug, that's a better decision.
We should just be clear before we leave this. This is not a final decision. This essentially just stays the decision by the lower court judge that this was an unconstitutional act. Even under these limited circumstances, I'm surely not defending them, the distribution of the drug under those circumstances is still still legal and still available. We're talking to Andrea Cabral. Now we can move to Marjorie's favorite story.
Well, it is my favorite story.
Should I play a sound for this guy?
Absolutely.
Here is a guy who you've never heard of, Representative Brian Slayton. He's on a show that I think is Marjorie's favorite, Real America with Dan Ball. And first of all, the first thing he mentions, I did a little research, is made up, but that's okay. And here he is because he's concerned about the grooming of young children, and he's a man of his word. Here he is, Representative Slayton.
It was just a grooming event. And we wouldn't, I don't know anyone that would say it was okay if these kids were there and there was a female stripper there doing the same thing and kids are putting dollar bills in their underwear. Mm-hmm. No one would think this is appropriate. And this is just going to the grooming, the sexualization of our children.
That's enough for him. I don't want to hear more of him. But the thing you got to say,
no one is putting any dollar bills in the underwear of people.
I just said he made it up. But at least even if you disagree with him, he is a man who adheres to principle. Is he not?
No.
Okay, why would that be?
Because he is now, I would say, credibly accused, because there apparently is somebody who has direct knowledge of the incident, of inviting an intern to his condo. Underage intern at 11 o'clock or something like that at night, and plying this intern with alcohol. Yeah.
Wait, can we repeat that? Wait a second. He is against grooming and doesn't like any misbehavior around kids.
Right.
And he had an underage woman, an intern.
Right. After 10 o'clock on a Friday. This happened just on March 31st,
To his apartment,
and served her, had some drinks with her.
Well, that's not consistent with his ordinary positions.
No, but the bigger story in all of this, and people who are on social media, I'm sure it's on Twitter, it's probably on Instagram, there is a running list.
You showed me, it's great. Go ahead.
Yeah, people really should look this up. There are a couple of memes that, of course, spring up around this kind of stuff. One is every accusation is a confession. When it comes to the GOP, there is a list, and it actually takes your breath away of either GOP politicians associated with the party in some way, sort of highly placed in the party, GOP elected officials, chiefs of staff, other sorts of staffers, and usually people who are, upfront about this, anti-trans, anti-drag show, anti-LGBT stuff, all of the accusations of grooming, who have been not just accused, but convicted of sexual assault of children and adults, and have done time. You've got the North Dakota guy, right? One of the most recent. 10 years for this North Dakota state senator just happened. for, I think, over a 14-year period. He was convicted of incest, and he only got 10 years. 14-year period, it was his stepdaughter. But if you Google, all you have to put in the search engine is list of GOP sex offenders. And it's not that it's just a made-up list. You can click the story, and it takes you to the local story. And the numbers are staggering.
And I would imagine that a lot of them are very conservative. They're also very concerned about the sexualization of children.
Yes.
You know, this guy has actually been it's been elected to office in Texas, this guy, Slayton, whatever his name is. And apparently he's pushed for a lot of other extreme laws in Texas.
Well, like what?
Yes, he proposed giving property tax cuts to straight married couples, but not to married LGBTQ couples or those who have been divorced.
He's in the process of a divorce, by the way.
No, he is not.
No, I'm not kidding. No, I'm absolutely. He and his wife were in the process of a divorce. They then decided to sort of, pull it back a little, I guess, because of his public profile. My sense is that she'll be pushing for it now that she knows about the intern.
That is my sense. She will be too.
I just Googled it. He's actually marrying the 14-year-old intern. We don't know that she's 14. I was just kidding there. Can we move on?
We don't know that he's marrying her either.
This
is, to be clear.
That's yet another great story of sadistic cruelty. This story, which is creeping up on us, this trial is starting next week.
Oh, my God.
Rupert Murdoch
I'm so excited.
Could be the first witness in the damn thing. And what the judge has done, other than declaring already that there's no dispute of fact about defamation, about lying.
Which is extraordinary.
I've never heard of that, and I was going to ask you, I've never heard a judge determining in pre-trial proceedings that issue doesn't go to the jury because it's been established already. Yesterday, the judge is saying, and by the way, the other thing is, you guys, meaning Fox News, you lawyers, you're lying to us by not producing documents or recordings when you said you had. And it turns out a former producer at Fox News is suing Fox News because she was silenced, or she alleges this. And this is just so, I don't know what they're going to do on the stand. Maria Bartiromo is one of these people who was most emphatic about how the election was stolen. Obviously, she did her research. Here's part of her research and a recording. She is talking, they don't know the name, this is a Trump associate. She's talking to this person about the tampering with Dominion voting machines. The call took place in December of 2020. Listen carefully, hear his voice, and then his description of what is actually happening with the Dominion machines that people like Bartiromo said on air stole the election from Donald Trump. Here it is.
Can you just go off the record for 1 sec here?
Yeah, sure, of course.
When the Secretary of State did its audit, there was a fair bit of looking at the machines. The audit came in pretty darn close to what the machine count was with the receipts. So, I don't know the outcome of those, but our understanding, again, this is from the Secretary of State's office, was that there weren't any physical issues with machines on those inspections.
I want to repeat this if you couldn't make it out. The audit came in pretty darn close to what the machine count was. And from the Secretary of State's office, there weren't any physical issues with machines on those inspections. Translated in English, they were accurate. Dominion machines were accurate. Right. She hangs up and goes on the air and says Dominion converted Trump votes into Biden votes. They stole the election. I have to say, I'm not quite the lawyer. I'm not the lawyer that you are. If I've ever seen a slam dunk case on this level, I've never seen it like this in my life. Am I exaggerating?
No. It really is extraordinary. And because we're just kind of feel like it's like a tornado, you get caught up in this, so much news every single day. This case is unprecedented in its scope, in the fact that the plaintiff has pockets that are as deep and has the ability to go after, a corporation like Fox News. And I just have to say, in the pantheon of private lawsuits that turn out to be, huge public service, Dominion's going to go down in history because what they're going to be able to do to actually show people, there'll be a fair number of people who will just ignore it or won't believe it, to show how every day Fox is part of the grift and Fox is part of the lie. It really is going to be unprecedented. And so this judge, I think the judges have to be temperate in their remarks, So I think this judge has been well aware for a long period of time that Fox has been withholding information, has been lying by omission. The fact that the judge said to them, I'm going to sanction you, and I'm going to appoint a special master who is going to now do a deep dive into all of the things that you've been withholding, that is also unprecedented in something like this. But he waited until he had a sufficient basis to do it, and now he's going to do it. I don't know what they say when they get on the stand either. I do.
Well, you know what I'm dying to see is how Fox covers this, if at all. I did not learn that Brett Baer, who's been with Fox for a long time, he's a news anchor there. He tried from November to January of 2021 to do this special debunking election fraud. Needless to say, he never got to do it. So I'm interested to see if a guy like Brett Baer resigns or if they ignore it completely in the evening when they have Tucker Carlson and Laura Ingraham and
he will
Sean
be subpoenaed to testify.
Brett Baer.
Because the fact that he was ignored over months and months and months period of time to do this goes to their absolute intention to keep putting false information before their viewership.
You know, one issue that, and you follow this much more closely than I haven't heard this raised, and if it has, you'll clue me in. Correct me if I'm wrong, in the Alex Jones case, the jury came back and awarded the plaintiffs, these are the Sandy Hook parents, hugely more than they were even asking for.
Yeah.
So all of the analysts have said, if there's a $1.6 billion judgment against Fox News, which is what the claim the plaintiffs want, is it going to bankrupt the company? No, it's going to be hard, but it's not going to bankrupt the company. If the jury believes this is as egregious as the three of us do, they have the ability, I assume...
Well, that's a big if.
Well,
you never know
of course.
what a jury's going to do.
Well, most of us didn't think Alex Jones was going to have this kind of liability coming out, and he did. So maybe jurors are a little bit more responsible than we sometimes give them credit for. If they are responsible, and if we are right about the outcome here, they could decide that $1.6 billion is not enough, that $5 billion is what the judgment... I mean, they could bankrupt this company.
I think that's absolutely right, and I also think that goes to this part about what they didn't turn over, was that Murdoch is the executive chairman of both Fox News Corp and... I forget the
actual news operation.
And the actual news
which they were denying he had anything to do with.
They were denying, right. And then they said, but it's all public record, which shows that they were lying. But here's the other thing. What they really have to worry about is what happens to their advertisers. When they get a judgment like this that basically says, you lie to the public every single day, I would say to any brand that's advertising to them, you're spending your money to promote your product on a network that lies?
You know, that's an interesting angle because lots of times people call for boycotts of advertisers. I'm surprised there hasn't been more of that with Fox. You know, it was fascinating, too, that we know from this Dominion lawsuit that Tucker Carlson, who now claims he's a Trump fan, really hates him and says he found the president, the word he used, disgusting was the word he used, and he hates him with a passion and stuff. Nonetheless, and Trump is well aware of this, but nonetheless, because they want that audience, Trump and Carlson sit down and have an interview the other night at Mar-a-Lago. But you had to notice that the way the Fox cameraman placed the camera, Tucker Carlson looks like he was, towering over Donald Trump. It was very interesting the way they sat them in the seats. And I can imagine that Trump is very concerned about how tall he is. He must have been very upset with the Fox placement of the camera.
Well, that's an important part of his campaign, too. Hey, can we raise something else that I think is really important? Senator, I think it was yesterday, Senator Warnock from Georgia, Chuck Schumer, who's the head of the Democratic Senate from New York, obviously, have written a communication to the Attorney General of the United States asking him to look into the expulsion of the two members of the Tennessee House of Representatives, both of whom, by the way, have been returned to their seats in the last couple of days. Could you describe what they're looking for and what you think their prospects are before the Attorney General, Merrick Garland?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure that the DOJ will take up the case. I hope that they do, because the point is a really important one. At the state level, these two state reps were duly elected state reps. They are representing people who said, this is the person I want to be my voice in the state legislature. This notion that an issue of decorum on the floor of the state Senate is sufficient to overturn the will of the people. Not only is there federal law that is implicated here in terms of doing that, there's individual 14th Amendment rights, both Pearson and Jones about this. And so it does warrant a federal inquiry, if for no other reason, for them to make a decision that clearly delineates what states can and cannot do. Because what I really think Schumer and Warnock are worried about is that other gerrymandered, GOP-controlled state legislatures will do the same thing.
Well, you know what I wasn't aware of, because I thought this was pretty much a long shot. And my understanding is they're looking at three things here. One, the First Amendment rights of speech and assembly of the two men. Secondly, the right of the people who elected them, as you said a minute ago. And a 14th Amendment discrimination, was this based upon race? And as we know, the woman who was part of the Tennessee Three, who was not expelled by a one-vote margin, said it just may have something to do with the color of my skin. Pretty good witness, I would say. Is there some precedent on the point that you made? I've forgotten this. The legendary civil rights leader, Julian Bond, was elected, I think it was to the Georgia House, and he was expelled because I believe the issue was his opposition to the war in Vietnam, which is really pretty incredible. And he was expelled from the Georgia House, and the Supreme Court ultimately determined that expulsion was an unconstitutional act. So there is some precedent here.
There is some precedent. He never even got to be seated. They refused to seat him. Really? He didn't get through the door. But the speeches he made were not in the State House. Bond. Yeah, there were speeches he was making in public. So people try to distinguish those two things as well. That this was decorum on the floor of the Tennessee State Senate versus outside. And Lawrence Tribe weighed in and said, that is a distinction without a difference. The First Amendment is the First Amendment.
I just want to weigh in with a dreaded local angle here. I didn't know till today that Justin Pearson went to Bowdoin and spent some time in Boston. He's one of the reps that was expelled, and now he's back down in Tennessee, and spent considerable time here. I think he met his fiancée here as well. So we always like to point that out, the Boston connection. You know what I mean?
You missed. Philip Martin did a piece the other day that was great.
That's right.
I don't know if it's aired yet. I bumped into him in the newsroom, and he and Jen Moore, who was editing this thing, were talking about it, where he ordinarily went to, I don't know if it was the church where Mel King was a Union Methodist, where Mel King was celebrated the other day where we went. And when he left Boston, almost every Sunday, he zooms in to the service. And he didn't zoom in when Philip was there a week ago Sunday, because he was on Meet the Press with Chuck Dodd but I mean, he really has deep and continuing deep connections to Boston. Well, not only that, but they have created two superstars. I mean, these are young guys.
They definitely
They're
have a
in their
national
20s. You saw them both, Jones and Pearson. I saw Pearson last night on CNN. He was riveting. I mean, riveting. And they got it all going for them. They're young, they're good looking, they're black guys I hate to be so superficial.
All of the superficial things.
That's right. Well, it's true. You can't help but notice. And they are unbelievably talented politicians. Yeah. So it's kind of exciting.
It's also unbelievable. I'm thinking about, I missed that you texted me last night about the Cooper thing. I missed the show.
He was
great. But what's unbelievable? You go from virtual anonymity. You're a young kid, a state rep, and as we know here, being a young state rep is not exactly an exalted position. Maybe go home to your district and people are happy to see you, but it's not a huge thing. They go from that to being treated like garbage and being expelled in the most undemocratic fashion, and now they're practically spokespeople for a movement in this country that many people think could affect elections far bigger than their own.
And it was about the fact that they had just experienced a mass shooting, and they were there with all of those kids protesting this.
Okay, we have a lot going on with former President Trump. I want to get to one last thing. People may know that he's suing now Michael Cohen, his former lawyer, for $500 million for supposed breach of lawyerly confidentiality.
Good luck with that.
And then he wants his civil trial in a rape case delayed till things calm down for him. They're not going to come down for him, so I don't know what he's talking about. The Georgia indictments are imminent, and he also wants to stop from the testimony of former Vice President Pence. But this is a new one. This Jack Smith, the Energizer Bunny here at the Department of Justice, now is looking into fundraising scams, saying that the former President Trump, knew that he'd lost the election, and he was claiming otherwise to raise money.
Well, for two things. Everything is a grift. Everything is a grift. He monetized the presidency before he even walked through the door. It was all about making money. So it should surprise no one that he raised $200 million off of the election was stolen claim. It shouldn't surprise anyone. That is exactly what's in his wheelhouse. But I think it's quite possible. I mean, I've been very impatient with the speed of the DOJ's investigation and even the appointment of Jack Smith, who I think is probably one of the best prosecutors.
I wouldn't want to face him.
Me either. But I think it's very possible, given that this is a window into both the depth and the breadth of his investigation, that he will ultimately hand down a series of sets of indictments that cover each of these things. Because there's January 6th, there's the
documents,
election was rigged, there's the classified documents, there's this particular grift. There are so many of these things, and he seems to be covering the waterfront. So ultimately, we could see such a group of indictments against Donald Trump that it may almost be incomprehensible.
On that note, by the way, Andrea Cabral is smiling as she's saying those words.
Yes, I'm very happy about it.
Andrea Cabral, it's great to see you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Andrea Cabral.
Thanks.
We've been speaking with Andrea Cabral. She's former sheriff of Suffolk County and former secretary of public safety for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and she joins us every week, and she fills in for Jim and me sometimes when we are.
You were great the other day. I heard part of that. You were great. Thanks.
Not as great as Andrea and I are together, let's face it. I mean, I love Jared, but Andrea and I, the sisterhood thing going on there, right? Estrogen thing going on there, whatever it is. Anyway, coming up, Ask the Mayor starts in just a moment. Mayor Michelle Wu will be here to take our questions and yours at 877-301-8970. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News and facebook.com/GBH News.
I'm Philip Martin, in for Callie this week on Under the Radar with Callie Crosley. Jazz has a decorated history in Boston. From Count Basie to Miles Davis, some of the greatest jazz musicians of all time used to frequent our clubs. Today, not so much. We break down the past and explore the future of jazz in Boston. That's Under the Radar with me, Philip Martin, tonight at 9, here on 89.7 GBH and the GBH app.
Funding for our programs comes from you. And Atlantic Design Center by Eldridge Lumber and Hardware, committed to helping you achieve your vision for a new kitchen or bathroom and guiding you from design to completion, with showrooms in York and Portland, Maine. AtlanticDesignCTR.com. And Blythewald. Daffodils are just the beginning of the blooms, bulbs, and blossoms of spring visitors can experience at Blythewald. You can also have afternoon tea, Tuesday through Friday. Learn more at blythewald.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News, facebook.com/GBH News. Let me say again, it may think you can't get to the library because of the marathon construction. You can get to the library, and I would suggest you'd consider it, because we're joined now by Boston Mayor Michelle Wu. She'll be with us for the next hour. The number to get through to the mayor, bearing gifts as always, is 877-301-8970. Hello, Mayor Wu.
Hello.
How are you?
Great to be here. Great to be back at the library.
Great to see you.
That's right. We have a beautiful gift today, the Boston Athletic Association Boston Marathon Official Backpack 2023. Thank you very much,
I'm
Mayor
just the
Wu.
messenger today. I'm sort of the Uber swag.
That's right.
Delivering
That's right.
on behalf of the BAA.
Do you run? Do you run?
I have always aspired to run at various moments in my life. I've picked it up for a couple weeks at a time, but
so the answer is no.
I will not be anywhere near running, but I will be watching and cheering.
Did you just do something? You just did something right before the show.
We just came from a public safety briefing right in Copley Square. All the agencies at the city, state, and federal level. This is everyone has their own special connection to the marathon and where you always go to watch, or the traditions, or it's just a big moment for us. But it's a big international event,
Yeah.
and that
Of course.
requires so much coordination on the public safety side in particular.
Well, there's a lot going on this year too. The 10th anniversary of the horrible attack. Tell us about some of these things, like the One Boston Service Day. What's that about?
Well, since 2013, on April 15th, the marathon's always on the Monday, but April 15th was Marathon Monday in 2013, and on that date, every year there has been a commemoration of the horrible attack with acts of service and kindness in the community. This year, we are not only featuring 30 registered events. I will be participating in the city's cleanup of Franklin Park as one of those events, but we have an early morning commemoration with the families of the victims who have been heavily involved in the planning process. And then later that afternoon at 2:30 p.m. at the finish line, there will be an event with the larger One Fund community, all of the many survivors and community members who were impacted, to ensure that we are marking that day and remembering and being together with the memories of what everyone experienced, and also looking forward to this year and what these 10 years have helped grow in terms of community resilience and a focus on the opportunities that this race represents in creating opportunity for the next generation.
And Mayor, by the way, if people want to participate or they want to find out all the opportunities, is it boston.gov/oneboston?
It's boston.gov/one. I believe there's a
hyphen
Boston.
Boston.gov/one-Boston.
You know, we should probably know that. Where were you on 10 years ago? I don't know if we've ever discussed this with you. Where were you?
I was in the middle. I had just recently formally kicked off my very first run for city council, and our campaign office was just a couple blocks that direction from the finish line and the library here in the South End. And I was in the office. I believe we had gone in the morning and then had just returned a little bit ago, and then seeing the news. We heard it first from people streaming in to the office. People just started walking in off the street because it was a space where the doors were open and we had internet and a laptop set up with the news. And I just remember the sense of shock and confusion. And we didn't know in those early moments how big, how many more areas might be targeted or at risk. And it just the next many, many hours, that experience will never leave anyone who was in the area then. And certainly as we've been working with families who have been so deeply impacted, to see these incredible leaders channel that loss and experience and trauma into doing so much for the community. I mean, that is what we lift up and cherish.
I didn't realize you were just starting your campaign for your first elective office. Do you think that changed in some ways how you do what you do and how you approach your work?
Boston, I felt a sense of what was special about our community then, as someone who hadn't had the privilege of growing up here, but came here and found my way to community ties and connections. But that was a moment where the entire world was really watching Boston, and you saw the embodiment of what the spirit of this city has always been come out in the aftermath especially. And I think it very much shaped how I think about what Boston needs, what we're capable of, and in some ways how fragile and fleeting each moment can be.
One last marathon thing before we move on. For the first time, I think ever, there are about to be 3, I don't know if what are they called, tiaras? What are those things in your head? Wreaths, whatever it is. 3 somethings given, not to just the winners of the races, but to the male, female, and non-binary Boston fastest runner.
This is something that I've been so excited about.
Explain it if you would.
It is the Boston Marathon after all. I know there are many, many municipalities that are involved and people from all around the world come, but we wanted to celebrate the Boston residents who are actively participating and running in the race. And so we worked with the Boston Athletic Association it will actually be a bowl. So, it won't, I guess you could wear it on your head technically, but a glass bowl to celebrate the fastest Bostonian. And this is also the first year that the BAA has created an official category where participant runners can identify as non-binary, and there's exactly one Boston resident who has registered in that category. So we're going to be celebrating their trailblazing leadership and breaking that barrier.
Terrific. We're talking to Mayor Wu. And by the way, while we're going to take your calls and your texts in a minute, Nicole, our coworker, you see right there raising her hand. If you're at the library and you would like to ask a question directly to the mayor, like eyeball to eyeball, go over to Nicole and she will listen to you and maybe allow you to get to the mic.
Well, let's start with a call from Lisa in the South End. You're on with the mayor. Thank you for calling, Lisa.
Hey, Lisa.
Thank you for listening. Mayor Wu, I live in the South End and fairly close to the South End Library, which, as you know, has been shut down for well over a year due to maintenance issues and then pipes freezing. Now, I know there's some sort of process of a study, et cetera, but meanwhile, a community service that provides so much for so many of all economic levels is nowhere to be found. And we need the process to be sped up at an incredible rate and emergency funds put in, because people of all economic levels use the library for various things, whether it's heat during the day, air conditioning during the summer, after school, homework help, and just a community area to gather. And something seems to be stalled, and all the bureaucracy, we can't wait for all the bureaucracy.
We got Lisa, we got your point as well said. Let's have the mayor respond if we can, please.
Yeah, and Lisa, I am so sorry because I know this was a devastating loss for the community. I spent many years going to the South End Library at least once a month for community meetings that were held in the room there when I lived nearby, and I know many people use this as a space not only to access books and internet and services, but to be together and to have the incredible talks and meetings that have taken place over many years there. As you know, the flooding that happened and was not in the basement that blew out the entire mechanical system was not expected and has required a lot of planning and emergency design. There are funds in this year's budget to keep that process going, and we actually have put this on an accelerated timeline for redevelopment. We chose, in consultation with the community, there were kind of two options. Do we put a relatively short-term Band-Aid on it to try to get it open as quickly as possible, but it would still be in the scale of about a year of construction before it was open, and then probably take it offline for the full renovation, or maybe it goes to the back of the line for renovations because it already got the patch, or just try to speed up the full renovation that had already been mapped out for a little bit further from now, but not too far. And so the feedback that we had received from community was, let's just do it right, do it once, and not have to disrupt people even more. And so we are working to accelerate that as much as possible. I'm pulling up my list here because we have a big focus on libraries in this year's budget. In addition to the South End redesign and renovation, there are going to be new libraries that are funded in Codman Square, Fields Corner, and Eggleston Square, as well as operational funding put so that every library can start to expand to include weekend hours as well. That's been a big part. So we know how critical libraries are, and this one is moving, but I apologize that these processes do take some time to get the design
Lisa,
right.
Thanks for the question. We really appreciate it.
You know, Mayor Wu, speaking of libraries, there is talk now of putting housing in libraries. We're going to have David Leonard here, the president of the BPL here. We're going to talk to him about this next week. But what is the plan?
We have, we've looked at every square foot, every little inch of city-owned property, whether it is open lots or existing buildings, to identify how we can try to get as much value for residents as possible. Housing is a need everywhere. It is our top need, finding places where people can affordably live. And so in the places where it has made sense, whether it's a community center that needs redevelopment or the West End Library, for example, the RFP, the request for proposals, just went out in that project to envision having affordable housing on top of the library there. It's a very sort of small, short structure right now, surrounded by higher buildings, so it makes sense to go up and to connect those resources and the land that we do have and make sure that more people have a very valuable foothold, an affordable home right in the center of the city.
You know, before we get back to the calls and the text, we're talking to Mayor Wu, who's kind enough to be joining us as she does every month. She'll be here to the bottom of the next hour, and you can call her at 877-301-8970 or text her at the same number. We try not to say to politicians when they're here that did a great job on something. Your speech the other day at Mel King's funeral and celebration was just spectacular, and I know I speak for Marjorie too. We played a little bit about an issue with a car in the neighborhood being buried by snow that Mel helped get out. But you know, one of the things that was really interesting, one of the speakers at the beginning from I think a fellow fraternity member was talking about the night before at the memorial. One of the speakers, I think it was Michael Caine actually, stood up and said, why don't we change the name of Columbus Avenue to Mel King Avenue? And the speaker said, after telling a story about going over with Mel King to Carson Beach, and when black people in the city went to Carson Beach at that time, it meant bottles thrown at them and a lot of violence. Why don't we rename Carson Beach Mel King Beach? And there was thunderous applause. You were there to hear it. What'd you think?
I believe that was Reverend Culpepper speaking, giving that
I think you're right. I think you're right, yeah.
Pastor Minyard Culpepper, who has been an incredible leader on so many fronts for our city, following and in that journey that Mel blazed for so many, fighting for housing justice and economic justice, and that the community conflicts over Carson Beach about who belonged and who actually had the right to access fully public amenities is one that we are still working to ensure, whether it is open space in the seaport that is technically public but doesn't necessarily look it because it's so near different spaces or doesn't feel accessible to residents from every part of the city. I can't tell you the number of times that I'll run into young people or even older people in the city who say they've never been out to the Harbor Islands or some of the spaces that we need to guarantee are truly accessible and available to all. So Carson Beach, I believe, is a state DCR space, but we need to make sure that we are commemorating the great Mel King, and we've been involved in conversations. We recently renamed Mel King Academy in the South End, the former McKinley School, and we'll continue to find ways to lift up his example, which will continue to inspire generations to come.
Well, if we were to ask Governor Healy the same question tomorrow, I didn't know that it was a state beach, and she was open to it, would it have your support?
I am open to talking about any commemorations. I mean, of course, we want to do this in close coordination with the family and their wishes, and we're undergoing those conversations.
That's the voice of Mayor Wu.
Mary in Boston, you are on with Mayor Wu.
Hi.
Hi. I'm a longtime resident of the North End, and I'd just like to start by thanking Mayor Wu for the thoughtful approach she's taking to outdoor dining in the North End, because it's a big challenge, and everything that residents need to access in the North End is on Hanover Street, including the fire station. But my question relates to the fact that there is actually still plenty of outdoor dining in the North End, at least 15 places the last time I counted. So my question is, why isn't the city making this clear when people incorrectly say that the North End has shut down outdoor dining? And that way people like Jim will know they can get all the outdoor chicken parm that they want this summer.
Struck a nerve, Mary. Thanks for the call. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Mary, for that clarification. It has been a very muddled message, I think, because there's been so much emotion tied to this, and I understand, right? I understand our small businesses are so important to every neighborhood, and they are iconic. The restaurant community in the North End is iconic, really known around the country. And I think some of the very loud voices have made it so that the details and the nuance hasn't been communicated all the time, and I take ownership for that. So as you lay out, all that's been changed is that after several years now of trying to make it work in different ways, it has not been fully working for the residents to have outdoor dining in the street in the North End. There are many, many restaurants in the North End, 90 plus restaurants in a quarter of a square mile radius, and some of them do have access to spaces, sidewalks, or areas that are large enough to accommodate outdoor dining, and that is, by all means, we're working with everyone to get them serving that chicken parm on the street, any day now. But for on-street outdoor dining, that presents a different and unique challenge when it is so condensed on one single street, and it's a different situation than any other neighborhood experiences. We were begged by residents to try to do something because the neighborhood was feeling unlivable for many who were trying to get to where they needed to go, and we need to just think about what the larger solution could be here, and we're taking the time to do that right. But thank you for being a part of the city and this neighborhood, and please keep me updated as to how you think it's working this summer with the changes that we've made.
On a related note, I think the reason Mary was making fun of me is because I think we suggested on the air the other day you should shut down Hanover Street and Newbury Street and a lot of places. And I know you're sympathetic to the notion that where people can walk and gather and their community things. I think $100,000 was, correct me if I'm wrong, given to a commission to look into what should happen to Copley, if there could be some sort of closure there. Where are you as somebody who believes, I think, in all these community, the more community spaces,
Absolutely.
The more family spaces, the better. Are closings in our future that would allow those kinds of things to happen?
Yeah, there's a couple factors that have to all go into the stew together when we think about this. One is that our administration is always going to err on the side of trying to innovate and testing things out and finding ways to make it work so that we can create community infrastructure. That is very, very important for our economy, for our healing from the pandemic, for many, many reasons. We need to ensure that there's emergency vehicle access everywhere. We need to ensure that the small businesses and neighbors in the area are consulted and have had some understanding and dialogue. We need to have a sense of how this will impact congestion and other issues that may be associated with parking and quality of life. What we've done in Copley Square is to really just test that out. There was a pilot that ran for 10 days, which shut down the street right in front of the library and programmed it with seating and activities. It did not have a substantial increase or effect on traffic, which was great to see that. And we continue to engage with the residents, but that is an area where we believe that would be able to really liven up spaces. And there are cities around the country now that are there's different technology that's available. I don't know if you've seen on some of these videos that are floating around. You can have the bollards that can block car traffic be able to come up from the ground and go back down, either for emergency vehicle access or to have it be open on the weekends, but not during the week. So there's more and more flexibility, even in the technology and the infrastructure that's available. We will soon, in a couple weeks, be announcing our Open Streets program for this summer. There were 3 large, well, I guess if you count Newbury Street, 4 Open Streets events throughout the city last summer. Roxbury, Jamaica Plain, and Dorchester, and Newbury Street and Back Bay. We are going to expand and add more to that list, so we'll be announcing the dates soon, but the goal is it brings people together. There's a different sense of what public space is for, right? We're surrounded by public space, but it doesn't always feel like it when cars are driving at 40 miles an hour plus.
But you could see a future in which some streets, plazas were shut down permanently.
Downtown Crossing, for example, is one of the best examples of pedestrian access, bringing things to life. We have a street in Rosendale, Birch Street is shut down as well, and that has been ongoing for a number of years, and it's the place to go if you have time to spare and want to hang out with neighbors, and so it can make a difference when it can be great when it's done right.
Mary, before you get back to the calls, you just unveiled a new budget. You call it the Back to Basics budget. Give us some of the high points that you want people to know about.
Yeah, we are fortunate in Boston that many, many years of sound financial management and stability have given us a little bit more breathing room coming out of the pandemic to make investments proactively rather than just reacting and trying to plug holes in revenue sources or repair things that went wrong during the pandemic. And so we just recently were reaffirmed with a AAA bond rating by both bond ratings agencies. And that means we have the lowest possible rates for borrowing for infrastructure. And so we're able to invest in new community centers and libraries and maintaining and new school buildings that will be truly transformational. Our vision for Boston is that we want this budget to make sure we are first for families, that we are the best place to raise a family anywhere in the country. And some of that is investments that you'll see in new things like committing to swim lessons for free across the neighborhoods, putting funding into weekend library hours, or creating funding for senior programming to happen at community centers. We know there's, in terms of intergenerational families, there's a lot of need out there and interest in having spaces for our seniors to have programming during the day. We are adding electric bikes to the bike share program and making it a $5 subscription for up to 10,000 Boston residents to really build on the momentum that we saw during the unfortunate Orange Line shutdown of the interest in getting around the city in different ways. But rather than having only large-scale, flashy announcements year after year after year, this year we really wanted to highlight the needs of shoring up foundations. The processes that maybe have been short-staffed because of vacancies through the pandemic, or the programs that we deliver that in fact could be more accessible if we put a little time into changing how people can apply or find out. And so there's some examples of that, of people who will help get those who want to host a special event in the parks through the permitting process to do that more easily. Ways that we can get our affordable housing that's accessible through lotteries to be even more predictable and for that process to move faster. So there's a little bit of all the things that had been postponed because everyone was all hands on deck, emergency crisis for public health during the pandemic. We need to go back and make sure we're not running on empty and to make these roles sustainable and make these processes work as well as possible.
How many new EV chargers?
Oh, I don't know the number off the top of my head.
It's $1 million, I think.
Yeah, I'll get back to you on the
Great.
number. But that's a big part of ensuring that we're not stuck in a chicken and egg. Many people now with rebates and resources available to buy the vehicle can't do it if there's nowhere to charge.
There's a caller who I think wants to raise something that Marjorie and I plan to, and he'll probably do it better. So Peter on Mass Pike, you are next. You're on with Mayor Wu. Welcome.
Yeah, hi. I'm a fellow Roslindale. I'm a neighbor in Roslindale and a big supporter of yours. But I read an article in the Boston Globe last week, which I'm sure you saw, about this police officer who assaulted this gentleman from Roxbury many years ago and hurt him very severely. He was in the hospital, and then he complains, he makes a charge. Internal Services confirms that this officer, who has had multiple charges against him, did in fact assault this guy and lied in the police report. It goes to the commissioner's desk and nothing happens for 4 years. And I have to tell you, I am so cynical about police oversight, and it makes me enraged. And I guess I want to know, since I'm sure you read that same article, did you call your police commissioner that second and say, sign this now and get this officer off the street?
Peter, thank you.
I just don't see any...
Sorry. I think she understands your question. His name is Dana Leckie. Mayor.
Yes, we did reach out and make sure that there was an understanding not only of an individual case that might be highlighted in the media, but what the system and the process is overall for how complaints that are being investigated ultimately reach a resolution one way or the other. And this one is still in active investigation, and it can be, again, city processes anywhere can take some time, particularly when it comes to the police department. There's kind of meticulous investigations and various steps to look at what the potential violations were, what the complaint was, and documentation and interviews. And the commissioner at any stage now, there's been multiple commissioners in that period, at any stage can also send things back for more thorough review or investigation. And some of the ones that have reached a conclusion recently did involve similar processes where there's back and forth over multiple rounds. And so this is the whole system is one that Commissioner Cox, I know, is working to assess and make sure can work properly, because ultimately the trust of residents is what empowers us to be one of the safest major cities in the country. And a key part of that is knowing that no one is above the law, and that when there are violations, that there is corresponding action internally. With this case, again, the police department handles their own investigations, and it has not reached the stage yet where we are privy to being able to share anything on that.
Thank you, Peter. Did Commissioner Cox, I have a few questions about it, if I may. Commissioner Cox assure you there'd be an imminent determination here?
There are multiple inherited investigations that are ongoing, and so with this one in particular, we move as quickly as we can, but also want to ensure that the department is putting their resources in the right way and not necessarily just based on when something is lifted up in the media, but certainly this one is one that is among those under investigation.
Can we
now.
speak about the trust issue, Mayor Wu, if you can, though, for a second? I know you care about it a lot. You just mentioned his name is John Danilecki, nicknamed Pepper Jack because of his frequent use of pepper spray on protesters. Globe did excellent reporting. I didn't know a lot of this. 21 internal affairs complaints filed against him, about 39 allegations in those 29. Roughly a quarter were for use of force. In the 3 findings against him, none of them had been about use of force, even though, as the caller said, the determination here was that he violated the use of force guidelines and lied. There's video we've all seen of him grabbing and shoving protesters after the murder of George Floyd. If you face a constituent who says, how can I trust that I'm safe in my community when John Danilecki is still on the force with this kind of record? What do you say to that constituent?
Every single day, we are working to make sure that not only are individual situations that happen to come out in the public addressed, but that in fact the underlying system of accountability and discipline and community policing is itself kind of nourished and invested in. And there are a lot of things that the commissioner is still staffing up to be able to do, and there are a lot of things moving at the same time. But I can say with full certainty that I am confident in Commissioner Cox's ability to lead this department and to do so in a way that builds on community trust. He knows inside and out what we need in that structure. He's been in every role and at every level of leadership, and he's making the changes that are needed while also staffing large-scale events like the marathon and working through some of the things that are on his plate from previous administrations.
One last thing, would you be comfortable having this Danilecki policing your neighborhood based on what you know to be factually demonstrated? Would you be comfortable?
My hope is that, when we look at the internal processes, that they reach a standard of trustworthiness in every step of the way. Sometimes, and I want to be honest, that sometimes there are complaints that are made that are thoroughly investigated, in fact, that do not result in, are documented not to be merited in deserving discipline.
But this one was merited.
And the use of body cameras and having footage illuminates a lot and takes a lot of that out of that gray area of who is believable and he said, she said. And so we need to incorporate the standards not only, again, when there's a moment that comes out publicly, but in the underlying system and that will be the most sustainable way to have a department that reflects the city's values.
Well, I just want to say, in fairness, you mentioned these internal processes. It's worth pointing out that commissioners have fired police officers over the years. We talked about this with Bill Evans.
We've talked about it with the mayor, too.
We talked about it with the mayor. And they get reinstated through arbitration. You have spoken to us about changing the system so it's a civil service decision and not an arbitration, because the arbitrators have historically sided with cops who shouldn't be there. So this is what you're working on.
This is an issue that we have been pushing in our ongoing negotiations. It ultimately comes down to that legal document of the contract that defines many, many aspects of the operations and accountability. And I believe I've said very clearly, and I believe many, many residents in our community also believe, that there are certain categories of misconduct and offenses that should be taken off the table when it comes to arbitration, and we continue to push for that in negotiations.
We're talking to Boston Mayor Michelle Wu. She's with us for Ask the Mayor. She's going to be with us for another half hour or so. We'll be right back. This is Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, and we are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News and facebook.com/GBH News.
Years after the Boston Marathon bombing, some of the medical volunteers at the finish line are speaking publicly about their experiences.
I was shaking like a leaf, and I thought, okay, this is what I'm going to do. Go from one patient to the next, and just put in IVs.
The horror they saw that day and the love that emerged in the aftermath on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Rockland Trust Bank, dedicated to providing advice and support to the community for over 115 years. More at rocklandtrust.com. Rockland Trust Bank, where each relationship matters. Member FDIC. And National Grid, wishing you a happy Earth Month and offering access to heating and cooling solutions like heat pumps that can help businesses achieve their sustainability goals. Learn more about heat pump technology at ngrid.com/future.
Trusted, local, news. You're listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR. What matters to you.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy, Marjorie Egan. We're live at the Boston Public Library on a day we're ordinarily not here, a Thursday, because Mayor Wu was kind enough to give us and you an hour of her time. She's here till the bottom of the hour. Tomorrow at 1 o'clock, the governor will join us at the library for Ask the Governor. If you want to speak to or text the mayor, it's 877-301-8970.
I believe we have Marcus at the Boston Public Library microphone. He wants to talk to the mayor about mental health issues around the marathon. Thank you for joining us, Marcus.
Hey, Marcus.
Sure. Hey, everybody, and welcome, Mayor. Great to see you.
Great to see you.
Trailblaze in your position. I'm a family therapist or systemic therapist for the last 32 years, and I've worked extensively with trauma. And trauma has been heightened with COVID and opioid situations, and so that can also add to the re-traumatization around what happened with the Boston Marathon. So this kind of nexus of three big things kind of coming together. What mental health services are available for the marathon itself? And I hadn't even thought about this till I was thinking of this here, as well as ongoingly in the city of Boston. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for what you do. We need more people doing what you do, and one of the initiatives that the city is embarking on is to try to help support clinicians, potential clinicians, especially those from Boston representing our neighborhoods, from filling the many, many staffing vacancies and shortages because of burnout, because of the general labor market that we're in. And we are working to help place and fund the training of new clinicians as well to join you in this incredibly noble field, because our residents need that service and people to address deep mental health needs. We see it every day in our schools, in the calls that we get at City Hall, and as you say, this year, as we mark 10 years since an incredibly traumatic event for many, many people, the provision of trauma supports at the various events is going to be a key part of that. We are, our Boston Public Health Commission, for the first time, added a new Chief of Behavioral Health role, and Dr. Kevin Simone, who is the incredible leader in that role, has been working with community and bringing in different organizations who could help us reach even more residents with this space. They're about to embark on a healing tour that will include space for conversations about what people experience on a day-to-day basis and what needs, therefore, on the trauma supports and behavioral health side that we can provide and layer in. So it is very much the epidemic coming out of the pandemic that we still see everywhere in the systems that we're trying to build, and the impacts on families everywhere.
Thank you, Marcus. We really appreciate it. Thank you for being here. Brittany and JP, you're on with the mayor of Boston, Michelle Wu. Hi, Brittany.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Hi, thank you, Mayor, for making time for this. I am a BPS staff person at a high school. I have students with multiple disabilities, and I coordinate the community trips for them. My first issue that I've been struggling with this year is that my students receive door-to-door transportation to school, so they don't qualify to receive a staff. So our staff are currently paying out of pocket for our students to access the ski during the day to get.
Excuse me 1 second. Can you make out what Brittany's saying, Mayor
You
Wu?
kind of cut out for 1 second there, Brittany.
Can you go back about 15 seconds, Brittany? We heard you say that you're the coordinator of trips, but take it from there, please.
That's better.
Yeah, so I coordinate community trips.
Great.
And my first issue that I've been having this year is that my students receive door-to-door transportation to and from school, so they don't qualify for a T-Pass. So our staff are paying out of pocket to get our students on the T to, be able to access the community and go on field trips and get to work. We had an event on Monday, a field trip, a timed event that I received a grant for. And we took the Orange Line to Back Bay, and at the platform we were met with an elevator that was closed off for repairs without notice. And this isn't the first time this has happened, so I guess I'm curious, is this something you're aware of, what the office is doing, and who I can contact to maybe, partner with to express these frustrations, because the message it's sending my students is that their city isn't meant for them to access it.
Thank you. That's incredibly helpful. This is the stuff that I relish, the real examples that we can dig into and figure out a way to make sure that we can close gaps and address these challenges. Thank you, first of all, for being a BPS teacher. We so need you and appreciate you. And our vision had been that every single 7th through 12th grader would have access to a free MBTA pass. So I need to double check to make sure that there's no exemptions there, even for students who are receiving door-to-door service, and we'll follow up on that. On the piece around coordinating transportation and access when it comes to the MBTA, I mean, I, for years, was pushing a stroller with 2 kids in it to get to City Hall, and the experience of having to navigate, even when the elevators are functional but incredibly slow or not, properly sanitized, and all that is very, very frustrating. And so, the best contact, if you can stay online, we can somehow get your information. I'll get you connected in with our. There's someone in the mayor's office who thinks about education all the time. Our senior advisor for. Children and families, Rebecca Granger, and we'd love to help troubleshoot here.
Brittany, don't hang up. We're going to get your contact information and share it with the mayor's office immediately. Thank you very much for your call.
Mayor, we're speaking of the schools. There was a real heartbreaker where about 70 kids, rising 7th graders, got notices in the mail, either that they were eligible for the exam schools based on their criteria, or they weren't, but they were wrong. So some of these kids that thought they were eligible are not eligible. Well,
so I did a lot of digging into this because it's just heartbreaking to add. I know I have personally lived what it's like when I was raising my sister, and this whole process of how to think about what comes next for high school and BPS can feel like a very high stakes tightrope wire that your family is walking, and to have one more wrinkle in it is just unnecessary. And at the very least, I am glad that this was caught at this stage where it, again, disrupted many families, but did not result in admissions decisions or anything needing to be withdrawn. I will give just a little bit of the rabbit hole that I have been down to understand what happened, just to make sure that everyone has a sense. There were, I believe it's 26 students who had received a notice that they were qualified to apply, who had to be told that they in fact were not with the more accurate GPA calculations. And then there were 39 students who had not received a notice, but in fact were eligible, and so kind of got this last second notice to apply. And so that individual outreach has happened so that each family knows where they stand. This year, because the criteria had been different during the pandemic, when mass testing wasn't safe or available, and the requirements were ramping up, this year was a new set of grades that were being calculated 2 years rather than 1 year when it compared to what was happening last year. And so the new system was technically not being implemented how it had been promised to be implemented. It's a very small issue around 2 years of grades in 2 subjects being averaged together. Yeah. And rather than averaging it all at once, averaging each grade and then averaging the grade, it results in a different calculation. So it was that level of specificity in implementing this new system. We know what happened. It won't happen again. And we're so sorry to those families who got hopes up and were invited into the process. I am committed to making sure that we're a district where every single high school offers something unique and special and exciting, so that it doesn't feel like you have to jump into a lottery system or walk a tightrope. Every choice should be great, and we are making changes in the facilities and other ways so that that will be true.
Before we leave this topic, I don't think either of us, or maybe listeners, know how you operate behind closed doors. I remember when you were talking to Marjorie just now, I was thinking of Charlie Baker was here the day the COVID registration for vaccine crashed. Oh, yeah. And we didn't think he was going to show up, and he did. And his head was ready to pop off. He said, "My hair's on fire," and it's pretty clear he lost it in his office. I don't mean that critically. Do you, when you have a thing like this, I mean, you're in charge, as you know better than I, and something like this that is this painful happens, and I know you care a lot. How do you just calmly call the superintendent and say, what do we do? How do you deal with things like this?
In some ways, being a mom of 2 young boys prepares you for expecting the unexpected. There are many moments of this job that are difficult and very unexpected. And when it's the combination of something that it just is so frustrating, and you feel like, oh, could we have done it differently? My first instinct is, again, from my being a mom, let me first make sure I understand what really happened. Rather, the worst thing that I can do in this role is to try to jump to conclusions, and that can cause all sorts of cycles of misunderstanding at all different levels. And so I actually like to be immersed in the way down details, just so I can know, was this a systems problem? Was this a kind of individual staff member who needs support on a particular thing that went wrong in the human error part of it? Was it a bit of confusion that we actually will affect this and that and the other? And so my goal, you can't undo what has already happened, but you can be honest about it. You can understand why it happened, and you can try to earn the trust back of residents by showing that you care and are working so that the system itself will be different next time.
Do you yell?
I don't really yell. Okay. I'm not a yeller.
Jim can't understand that.
Okay, let's move on. Mel and Roslindale, you're on with the mayor, Michelle Wu. Mel.
Hello.
Hi, you're on with the mayor.
Hi, Mel.
Hi, my neighbor, the mayor.
Hi, Mel.
I'm calling. Do you know I'm a bombing survivor?
Oh, Mel. Hi, Mel.
Oh, Mel
New York.
Arredondo.
Yeah, yeah.
Hi, Mel.
Hi, Mel.
Yeah, and as is my husband, Carlos.
Yep.
And I just wanted to put forth an idea in regards to mental health. And that, we're going to be together on the 15th. I personally know that many of people, it will be overwhelming for them. And I was wondering if there was going to be anybody on site.
Yes.
To take these people into their care.
Yes, there will be. There will be supports on
Okay,
site.
wonderful. Thank you.
Mel, thanks.
Then my
I'm
second-
sorry. Oh, I'm
no, no,
sorry.
no, no,
I'm so
not that.
sorry. Go ahead.
There's after the bombing and after the marathon, I wanted to know if the city could set up a a group for people from the who had experienced the bombing who did not get assistance because it was mainly PTSD, hearing loss, and were left out.
Mayor?
Thank you, Mel. Thank you for being such a strong advocate, and I know it's hard to share your story and continue to be an advocate in some ways because it is so personal. We have heard from many people who did not meet the very detailed criteria for qualifying for one fund support because of physical trauma, but who experienced much trauma otherwise. And everyone is invited to the lunch and commemoration that we are, I guess it's a little bit later than lunch, but the event and commemoration that we are having. I will make sure if you are connected, we've kind of helped to just wanting to gather people in one place so that we can begin this process of understanding what type of group and follow-up would be helpful. If you feel fully empowered and deputized to invite those in a similar situation to join on that day, and we've done so with others who have reached out in the same way. We want to make sure that this is a fully inclusive event, and there we can connect more on what should come next.
Mel, it's good to hear from you. On a related note, a colleague just reminded me just this morning on our station, it was a great feature story by Mark Hers, one of our colleagues, on the intersection of trauma and running, and they focused on survivors who are coming back to run Boston on the 10th year anniversary. You should listen to it. It's terrific. Can we change gears for a second and talk to you not just as mayor, but as a two-time Harvard alum? Margie and I were talking before about this guy who I'd never heard from, a major donor to Harvard, Ken Griffin, is a story in the Globe today, $300 million. There's a lot of complaint from students and others because he's a big supporter of Ron DeSantis. And there's a really powerful quote from this Xander Moritz, who's a first-year Harvard student who took the semester off to advocate for student rights in Florida. He says to the Globe, "What's unacceptable is forcing queer students, students of color, trans students to learn in a school named after someone who pays money to fund legislation that puts their lives at risk and someone whose political activity jeopardizes their existence and quality of life." Harvard has named the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences after this Griffin. What's your reaction as a Harvard grad to them taking this money and prominently displaying his name on the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences?
Yeah, it is for me, coming from a family where I was first to go to college in this country, and just many, I felt the whole time at Harvard that I was drinking from a fire hose, just in spaces that I would never have otherwise been in, and there were so many doors open. But it is at the same time a large institution, a self-sustaining, hundreds of year old institution that can be slow, and I believe sometimes too slow to catch up. Conversations over many years around fossil fuel divestment or other ways in which young people, particularly who are so ready to take on every opportunity in their lives, wanting to also be part of institutions that mirror that. The best way is to lift your voice, to then work to change the governance as well. Ultimately, fossil fuel divestment moved forward because of an organized effort to elect those to the governing board of that university who were there primarily and specifically to help usher in that change. And of course, there are details of how that has to happen and many things to be worked out for it to be sustainable and match all the other things that are happening. But here's an example of when there's conflict around values, when there's conflict around views, there are channels to get involved and to try to make a difference through the governance as well.
Would you have preferred they not do what they did here? Take the money and do the naming?
I don't know enough to, for me, when it's a public sector institution, right, I think we have very high standards in the city of Boston for what our name can be affiliated with. When it's a private institution, albeit one that is so historic and raised up internationally as an example of what a university should be, it feels, and those of us connected to that community believe there should be higher standards, kind of self-accountability in that. But this, ultimately, this is about the university's policies and procedures. And again, I believe it's more of a systemic governance conversation than a one-off.
Mayor Wu, you mentioned being at Harvard and feeling like you were inhaling from a fire hose that you never expected to be, or however you put it. I thought there was this story in the Globe a week or two ago talking about Asian kids in high school here. You were in school in Chicago, right? You came to college, you were in school. And I wondered if that resonated with you. You mentioned being at Mel King's brunch at the service for him the other day and how going there and made you feel like you were part of the city. Renee Graham talked about the same kind of thing in her column when she talked about the racism in Boston, how she felt encouraged by his example. So I wondered if that story about the Asian kids, I think one of the points was that you hear a lot about black kids, Latino kids, you don't hear that much about Asian kids. Did that story resonate for you?
There is very much a sense of feeling both incredibly invisible and visible as an Asian American. Growing up, I remember there's a perpetual foreigner stereotype, right? No matter how long your family has been in this country, I know folks who are leaders in the Asian American community who are 5th, 6th, 7th generation, but we all get asked the same, right? Where are you actually from, right? And no matter how fluent you are in English, you still get that question. And I was born here, but in Chicago, but my parents were immigrants, and so for us, it wasn't that far back that the journey had been made. But that sense that you don't quite belong, you're always sort of exotically having come from somewhere else, is a very real experience and stereotype that so many Asian Americans face. And I think in many cities where the Asian American population is growing, but is not, there are relatively few cities, and many of them are on the West Coast, where Asian Americans are the majority population. You see in Quincy, Malden here, there's a third Asian American, et cetera. But that sense of feeling like we're left out of the conversation is very real. Yeah. And so I was very moved by the young people who are organizing and creating that space to be seen, to have those conversations in public and openly, and to draw people in from all communities. That's really important, and I want to help them be a part of that too.
We have time for one more call, and it's you, Leroy. You're in Gloucester, and you're talking to the mayor of Boston. Welcome.
Hello, Mayor. Oh, and thanks for the welcome. I lived before I came to Massachusetts in New Mexico, and of course the First Nation people are very present. Being here 23 years, I feel that there's a lack, or I would like to see more presence of the indigenous peoples, and possibly there could be a center that's set up in Boston, and that maybe there was a natural area that would be sort of reserved for the First Nation people in Boston.
Thank you, Leroy.
Thank you. In fact, actually also at the service for Mel King was lifted up that there have been organizations established. There is a center, or there's an office and a space in Jamaica Plain where community members come together and advocate very effectively for policies at every level of government. And we want to do our best. The city of Boston, for example, is working to ensure that there's specific representation and resources and outreach, particularly for our Indigenous community members who are very much here and present and part of the leadership of the city. And so there have been efforts that have kicked off over the last year to make sure we're centering that and working alongside community members and leaders to address the needs of this community.
Leroy, thanks for the call. We appreciate it.
You know, Mayor Wu, every time you're with us, we get a lot of emails, very favorable emails to you. I'm just going to read one of them. She's from North Dartmouth, so unfortunately she can't vote for you in your re-election if that comes to pass. But this is typical of the ones we get. Here's Farina from North Dartmouth saying, I cannot remember any other mayor in the history of Boston as engaged, eloquent, transparent in her plans and goals. I admire Mayor Wu immensely. So there you go. We have a lot of those today. Just wanted to read one.
Okay, I have a question for you before you go. From the sublime, not to the ridiculous. As you can tell from that caller in the North End, I'm obsessed with outdoor patios, outdoor everything. We're going to talk to our listeners in a few minutes. Did you see this thing in the paper, the Canine Park or something?
Oh, that's right.
Is opening in Everett, where you can bring your dog during the day and you can drink at night.
Okay.
A boozy
dog park.
I didn't know till today that in the city of Boston, and you are the mayor of Boston, only service dogs that are trained to assist people, I'm reading from the service dog policy, with disabilities permitted on licensed establishments, which include outdoor patios. Please note, emotional support animals and pets do not qualify as service dogs. A lot of cities that are friendly to people who want to do outdoor dining and that sort of thing, let them bring dogs. How do you feel about this? The current, is it an ordinance, whatever it is, a rule of the city, sanitary code?
Yeah.
How do you feel about the banning of non-service dogs from these patios?
Many of I know the restaurant permitting system well, having crawled my way through it, both working for Mayor Menino and previously as a restaurant owner. Many of the regulations in Boston date back to years ago when a specific situation happened, or just to ensure that we're protecting health and safety first and foremost. Some of them may bear the need for review. In this case, again, there's things you have to balance. There are many people who are not able to enjoy, even in an outdoor space, if there were a dog that they were allergic to or otherwise not comfortable with. So, we should. I know there's many. I mean, anytime dog parks come up, the level of interest and outreach is fierce. So we want to make sure that our four-legged friends and their human companions are well taken care of in the city as well. So happy to poke around in this conversation to see if it bears updating or if this is where this is coming from, city, state, et cetera.
Mayor Wu, it's a pleasure to see you as always, and really thank you for your time.
Thank
I know everybody else does too.
Thank you very
so
much. We've been talking with Michelle Wu, the mayor of Boston, for another segment of Ask the Mayor, and we're very grateful to you, Ms. Mayor, for taking the time to be with us so generously. I want to report on some breaking news. Apparently, the leader of a small online gaming chat group where a trove of classified U.S. intelligence documents have been leaked over the past few months is a 21-year-old member of the intelligence wing of the Massachusetts Air National Guard, according to interviews and documents reviewed by the New York Times. An arrest is imminent, according to CNN. So we'll learn more about this as the day goes on. Mayor Wu, thank you again for being with us.
Thanks so much.
Coming up, we just talked with us about the mayor, the whole issue of dogs in Boston. Well, we're going to head over to Everett, too, where some cunning business owners decided that dog parks were missing one crucial
It's National Poetry Month, and GBH has your way to celebrate. Join us on Wednesday, April 26th for an exciting and inspiring evening of poetry at our next Beyond the Page event. Our panel of acclaimed local poets will each read some of their work and then discuss their unique approach to using the art form to touch upon social issues and their dreams for the future. Learn more and reserve your ticket today at gbh.org/events.
Support for our programs comes from you and South County, Rhode Island, featuring 100 miles of coastline and 20 public beaches. South County visitors can find many ways to enjoy the water in the Ocean State. Learn more at southcountyri.com. And Tools of the Mind, the research and play-based curriculum offers pre-K and K teachers tools designed to help ensure children develop cognitive, social, emotional, and self-regulation skills. toolsofthemind.org. And Boston Ballet, presenting Our Journey, featuring La Mer, a world premiere about ocean preservation by choreographer Nanine Lenning, and Justin Peck's Everywhere We Go, on stage starting April 6th, bostonballet.org. And the law firm of Davis Malm. Their employment lawyers have your work cut out for them. Learn more at davismalm.com. That's DAVISMALM.com. Davis Malm. Lean, agile, strategic.
I'm eating a piece of chicken, so let me just talk for a second. Okay, I swallowed it. Totally unprofessional, Jim.
Very unprofessional.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio, live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Just spit out a piece of chicken. This is disgusting.
Too much information, Jim.
Facebook.com. I'm trying to be honest, Marjorie, /GBH News. We're back at the library tomorrow at 1 o'clock. The governor will join us for Ask the Governor. I think I'm composed now.
Okay.
It's a dog park and bar mixed into one. You can call it a dog bark if you really want. Over in Everett, doors open today for something called, we just mentioned this, the Mayor, Park 9 Dog Bar. The premise is simple. You let your dog off leash, socialize with other dogs like you could at any other dog park. The difference, while the dogs are left to their thing, owners can do some socializing of their own, alcoholic beverage in hand. It's like a cat cafe, but you don't have to worry about running into Christopher Muther from the Globe. The number is 877-301-8970. Are you happy to finally see some innovation in the world of dog parks? And much more broadly, do you wish you could take your dog to more places, like the library, like a restaurant, which, as I just said to the mayor, we learned this morning, only service dogs are allowed to be brought to even outdoor patios. Would you like to see that regulation relaxed? Or do you wish people would leave their damn dogs at home so you can enjoy a nice meal without a fur ball in your marinara or whatever? 877-301-8970. Where are you on this? You're a dog lover. Where are you on this?
I think it's great if you have dogs outside. Some people are allergic, but they make
Well, it's
a complaint
outside,
about that. But if it's outside, you're much less likely to have any watery eyes or itchy eyes from the dog. Inside, I think is tough. I don't think most people want to go to a restaurant inside and have a dog a foot and a half away from them, doing things, dog-like things. You know what I mean?
If you promise not to ask me what cities, I do know there are some cities in the United States and in Europe, particularly, where you can bring a dog anywhere you want, kind of thing.
Yep. But I tell you what, I love this boozy dog park idea. I think this is great. This place over in Everett, it's today the 13th?
Today is the
13th?
13th.
Okay, well, it's open today. You can go over there with the dog, hang out inside or outside. They've got liquor, they've got little treats for the dogs, they've got treats for the human beings.
It's a pickup place, essentially,
well,
right?
It could be like the Match.com for people with dogs. I mean, I know so many people, a good friend of mine, love of her life at the dog park.
Is that true?
Yes, she got a dog, her whole life changed. I mean, people go to the dog parks in their neighborhood and they meet people because they're standing around watching the dogs. Well, this is a place you can go, stand around, watch the dogs. They have park rangers to make sure the dogs don't misbehave. Any bad actors will be disciplined, Jim, or asked to leave the premises. Meanwhile, you can watch TV or you can have a cocktail at the bar. They even have these cute spool things, sideways spools. Did you see the picture of the dog sitting on a little sideways spool?
Oh, I did, actually. I did.
Yeah. I guess if you want to go to the ladies' room or something, you don't want to put the dog back on leash. So they have an indoor and an outdoor thing. It looks fantastic. It's called Park 9 in Everett.
Well, we're not going to Everett to Park 9 anytime soon. So how about in Boston or Brookline?
I am.
By the way, does Brookline allow dogs at outdoor patios?
I have seen a lot of dogs at outdoor patios.
Well, I've seen dogs at outdoor patios in Boston, but it's not permitted.
I don't know if they're allowed, but you see them in a lot of places. The coffee shops where they're outside, where people are eating outside or
Doesn't it
drinking
create
outside.
a nice feel, don't you think?
Yes, it's very nice.
I mean, if it's not a vicious dog. If it's like a pit bull. I wouldn't want a pit bull.
Well, I'm coming around on pit bulls. My daughter's talked me into it.
Oh, don't do this.
But anyway, I've seen them at restaurants outside, too, in Washington Square.
By the way, let me just say in the spirit of fairness, because I've criticized pit bulls before, I want to be more fair-minded. Pit bulls are great until they put your head in their mouth. I mean, up until that moment,
They're spectacular. 877-301-8970. I guess the bottom line is, one, does this park, whatever this thing is called, what's
it's
it
in
called?
Everett. It's called Park 9.
Okay, Park 9 Dog Bar. Does that interest you? That's a minor issue. The major issue, would you like to see dogs allowed in more places in greater Boston,
Jim,
including and particularly outdoor cafes?
I should have said Park 9 Dog Bar.
Oh, is that what it's called?
Yes. Cocktails and watch the dogs, and it looks like a great idea to me.
Indoor
Where do you want to
go?
Outdoor?
I got it.
Let's go to Tim.
It's
in
indoors
Somerville.
and outdoors?
Yeah, the big
wow.
space. Yeah, so if in cold weather, whatever you want to hang out with the dog inside, you can do it there.
Here's Tim in Somerville.
Tim in Somerville, thank you for calling.
Hey, Tim, what's your deal?
Well, Marjorie, you're talking about the hair in the bowl of marinara. That's not even really the issue. I'm calling in. We have lived in Texas, I've lived in Florida, and truly, I have never seen a less dog-friendly state in my life than Massachusetts.
Really?
Here's the perfect example. There are breweries with large outdoor patios that you cannot take your dog to because they serve food. Now, again, they're not serving the food or preparing the food outside, but purely with them serving food, you cannot bring your dog in. So what the mayor was saying, again, no one wants to be eating in the North End with a dog sitting right next to them potentially, but at least the breweries, that's ridiculous.
Tim, that was well said. That was terrific.
I wonder why. Why are we less friendly to dogs?
Why are you asking me? You looking at me, or is that a rhetorical question?
Well, it's sort of interesting because Tim said he was in Texas, he was in Florida, and they were much more friendly there. Maybe because the weather's better, you spend more time outside, where the weather's warmer anyway.
But Tim, excellent. Thank you. Now, let me ask you a related question, Marjorie. Yep. You often call me and say, why is it that our staff gets such little work done? And I think I have the answer to the question. Yesterday, they spent almost the whole day on ChatGPT crafting a grotesque photograph of me having a sandwich on the Seine or something in Paris. Today, they apparently, because obviously they have nothing else to do, there's not a show they have to worry about, they have me walking down the street. I believe, is that me, Jamie? Thank you, from ChatGPT.
Could be Barcelona or something.
Where am I doing this? Do you know? Do you want to share this with us, Jamie?
European.
Paris, thank you.
Oh, he's back in Paris.
Walking down a cobblestone road with a dog, which I assume will be posted on BOS Public Radio soon. Why not? Because they have nothing else to do.
You know what, Jim?
Marjorie and I will take care of the show. Thank you.
They even have your walk down on ChatGPT, whatever the heck it is.
Okay.
That's how you look walking. This is incredible.
Okay, I want to get back to the topic.
On you.
Are you concerned at all that this is what they do when they're getting paid during the show? Does that not bother you at all?
I think you can do it very quickly, Jim. I think it only takes them a few seconds.
But every day?
And there you are, looking just like yourself on Chat. What is it, GBHT?
No,
or
not
something?
GBHT.
Chatbot, whatever it is.
Sure it is. Amy and Maynard, we're talking about dogs in more public places. Which side are you on? Hi, Amy.
I am absolutely on the side of there should be a spot for people and their dogs. However, that spot should never be at an outside place where people are eating.
You have strong feelings. Why do you feel that way, Amy?
So, a couple reasons. One, I work in a restaurant and I've seen it firsthand. And people just don't behave, never mind the dog. You're asking for a dog to know the rules, and they don't. People let the dogs eat off of plates. Yeah. They have leashes that, when they go on the patio, and the leash is like 5 feet long.
Good point.
Another person who's afraid of a dog trying to get to their table, and the dog's yipping, and everyone who owns a dog thinks that everybody else loves their dog. That's just not the case.
Wow.
A lot of us are afraid of dogs for one reason or another, or, I just want no part of it. They stink. Like, I'm just not a dog person, and it shouldn't be in a place where people are eating food.
Got it.
There's allergic people, scared people,
Yeah.
and the people who own those dogs, not all of them. Some people are great, but
Some are not.
Yeah.
Can I mark you down, Amy? Can I put you down as undecided?
No.
Amy, I was kidding. Thank you, Amy, for an excellent advocacy call. That was beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, we have some texters who aren't that crazy about dogs in general either. There seems to be a little animosity out there for our man's best friend, Jim.
Well, can I tell you, Mayor Wu nailed it. Didn't you find when you were a columnist at the Herald and the Globe that the thing that would get the greatest response was any column about a dog? Oh, wait a second. Your front page, where was that?
I was on the front page of the Herald with my dog.
Was it New Year's Eve or something with your dog?
I don't remember why I was there.
But was the dog was on your lap?
Yeah,
Harry the Peeve,
I
best
got
dog
a
from
lot
C
of
to
really
C.
nasty comments on that one.
I know, because they said you were whatever.
I was carrying on with my dog, my
I know.
10-pound dog, and I were, in a romantic affair. It was ridiculous.
Well, I don't think romance was the word they were using.
A lot of people hated me at the Herald, so it wasn't surprising. I got a lot of negative comments.
Okay, by the way, let me ask you, why aren't you doing any chat GBT things of Marjorie doing uncomfortable things? Apparently none of the staff is interested in that.
Walking a dog is not uncomfortable.
Okay,
Peter from Mansfield.
By the way, before you get to Peter, I asked Jamie for 11 stories today for the show. I got none of them. You know why I got none of them? Because he's doing this crap. Let's go to Peter
Well,
in
they're
Mansfield.
very entertaining. It's really too bad we can't put them up on the screen.
I think
so
he probably will
everybody
put
can
them up
see
on the
them.
screen in a couple of seconds.
Peter
in Mansfield, what's up?
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
My son lives down in the Tampa St. Pete area, and one of the last times I was down there, I was advised to go to a dog bar. And we may bash Florida for all sorts of different reasons, but one of the things they've done spectacularly well is having these dog bars. Not having a dog and just going there and meeting Zeus and Thor, a couple of Great Danes, and all sorts of other fluffy dogs and whatnot, and sitting there and having a drink and just hanging out with fellow people who like dogs. I think that's the right approach. I'm not sure about outdoor dining and other non-public spaces, but that is something that I would love to bring back to Massachusetts and see happen.
Beautifully put. A different position from Amy and Maynard. Peter, thank you kindly for sharing your thoughts
as the
with
previous
us.
caller talking about Texas and Florida mentioned, other states may be way ahead of us. Someone just texted and said they are dog park bars are super popular in other cities, including Austin, and people have gone there for quite some time. We're behind the times, Jim.
Well, there are a lot of places that do. Does anyone know if you do? New York City. Does New York City allow? Bless you, Marjorie's sneezing. Bless you, Marjorie. What are we talking? Does New York City allow dogs in outdoor patios? I can't remember. Let's go to Mark and JP. You're next on Boston Public Radio. This whole conversation, if you just tuned in, was inspired by the opening today in Everett of this thing called Park 9 Dog Bar. You take your dog to walk. Later in the day, it's a bar. You can have a drink while your dog is doing what it's doing, or he or she, whatever it's doing. And we want to know if you want more access for dogs to be in places like outdoor patios, that kind of thing. Hi, Mark.
Hey there.
Hi.
So I recently drove back from Arizona, from Arizona to Boston, stopped in Santa Rosa, Texas, Albuquerque, Paducah, Kentucky, Charleston, West Virginia. All these places, small towns, big towns, had dog parks. And when we got to Massachusetts, we looked on Google, and there was no dog park in Boston to go to. You know,
Is that
Boston
true?
was our destination, but absolutely.
Wait, there are no
Well,
dog
Google.
parks in Boston?
Well, there are, because
There
I've been to some, Mark. There's some in there's some in Dorchester. There's some.
Do you mean they're not enough, or you think they're none?
Well, there's not a few. We were essentially navigating via dog parks, and we found it very difficult to find a place for that.
Yeah, they might not.
Mark, we're going to let you go, not because of the content, but there's horrible feedback.
I thought that was me. There's
Oh,
also a
maybe.
dog
Oh,
park
sorry,
in the middle
Mark,
of.
stick around.
Well, I don't know if it's me. There was a.
Oh, it's the phone. Bye,
okay.
Mark.
There's a dog park right in the middle of Boston Common. Have you ever seen people in there?
Oh, yes, as a matter of fact. Oh,
running
that's
around
right.
there. There's that big, huge park over by. It's really beautiful. But in the Neponset section of Dorchester, it's massive. The one you can see from the highway. I don't know if it's officially a dog park, but you see all sorts of people in there with their dogs off leash, running around in different sections.
Did
of that.
you like socializing with other people when you had your dog?
I did. It was fun.
What was the fun part?
Well, you sit there and you laugh at the dogs, and you
do.
laugh at. I mean, I had this teeny tiny little dog.
He was a small dog.
He was a small dog, but he was an alpha dog, and he
was.
would chase around all the great big dogs. And people found that very amusing, because of course one of the big dogs could have stepped on him, and that would have been the end of my dog.
How do you not know if Brookline? You live in Brookline, is that correct?
A lot of dog parks in Brookline.
But how do you not know if they're allowed at outdoor patios? How do you not know that?
Because I haven't investigated it. I mean, I've seen people sitting there with their dogs in my neighborhood at restaurants that serve food.
Oh, you
outdoors.
don't know if it's permitted, though.
I don't
They
know
just do it.
I don't know if it's an issue that the selectmen have to get on
Well,
top
that's an
of.
excellent point.
Ezra calling from the truck. Thank you for
Ezra.
calling. How about Cambridge? Do you know what's going with the laws in Cambridge?
Of course I do.
Yeah, as long as you're putting me on the spot. Where
I
are
do.
they, Jim?
I would choose not to share that information at this particular
Okay,
moment.
you have no idea either.
Ezra,
thank you for
welcome.
calling.
Hi.
Howdy, folks. Can you hear me all right?
Yes. Sort of. Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Well, long time, first time. Great to talk to you both.
Love that.
I am calling because I'm the proud owner of a Siberian Husky.
Wow. Oh, those are beautiful dogs.
Beautiful, yeah. Yeah, he's terrific, and he probably tends towards maybe the better behaved end of the spectrum, and I still think that there are quite a lot of spaces that he's probably permitted to be in, but just completely unfit.
Wait, finish that sentence. A lot of places he's permitted to be in, but what, Ezra?
But for which he's completely unfit. He is, he's totally well behaved. He's a big old ball of love. He's very friendly to everybody, but he's just, even on his best behavior, and this is true for, I think, a lot of folks' dogs, even at his best, he can be a lot to manage if you're not somebody who has some pre-existing love for him.
You know, by the way, Ezra, you're exactly the person that prior caller was talking about, responsible dog owner, where even places you could go with your beloved Siberian, you choose not to, I assume out of concern for other human beings, yes?
Well, hold on now, Jim. I'm not saying I take the high road and don't bring him where he's permitted.
What are you saying?
I bring him everywhere that he's allowed, and sometimes he makes a little bit of a scene. But I've got a pretty good handle on him for the most part. So I wouldn't bring him to like an outdoor patio dining area and just let him run roughshod over the other diners.
I got it.
Thank you very much for the call.
Ezra, do you have any, before you go, do you have any idea about surrounding communities where dogs are allowed in outdoor patios or no?
I don't know a lot about it. You know, I go to, there's a lot of places in Massachusetts. I'll go to like Treehouse Brewery up in Charlton, and there's always a ton of dogs there.
Yeah, I think a lot, especially the beer gardens.
Yeah, that's good.
The
Ezra,
outside
thanks for your
places.
first call. We appreciate it. Do another one.
Now, Ted, you got to text back and tell us which restaurant it is, because he says one of our favorite restaurants has a room where you're allowed to bring dogs there. That's kind of interesting, but you got to tell us what restaurant it is. And then,
wait, one of our favorite restaurants has a room where you can bring dogs?
That's what Ted from Marshfield says, but he didn't tell me what the restaurant is.
A room.
However, Anna from Concord says the Liberty Hotel, that's the old jail down by the Astoria Drive, going over the river to Cambridge.
Yeah.
Anyway, Liberty Hotel, she says, has a yappier hour in one of their outdoor patios a few nights a week during the summer, and it's always a huge hit.
Well, it's exactly like what they're doing in Everett, except part-time kind of
And
deal.
other people have said, including Donna from Rhode Island, that other places have this. She said she's been to Maryland, and they have these dog bar parks for years. So we are maybe behind this as we are in other areas, Jim.
By the way, Beck, who's watching on YouTube, would like to see the pictures and posts of Jim. That would be me. How do we get to see them?
That's
How
right.
do they get to see them? Oh, is it posted right now? Oh, no, that's me. That's a human version of me.
Yeah, that's
not
you. Oh, there he is. There he is,
really
walking his dog on the Champs-Elysees. Doesn't he look beautiful?
Can you just tell me, what did you say to the ChatGPT? What'd you type in to get that outcome?
Just his name.
Picture of Jim Browdy walking a dog in Paris.
Jim Browdy walking a dog in Paris. And there you are.
Really, I mean, there are no photographs of me online walking down the street. That's pretty
I don't know.
incredible.
Well, this is why this is going to take over the world, and we're in big trouble.
It's a little scary, actually.
Christine, a friend of ours, just texted and said, I can't stand dogs. I don't drink alcohol. I recently escaped after living in Everett for 12 years. The idea does not appeal to me at all. Okay, Christine, we get where you're coming from here. And several people, including Denise from Dennis, says Provincetown is very dog-friendly. Jim, you spent a lot of time
that's
in
totally
Provincetown.
right.
You should know about that. Huh. Okay.
Oh, actually, I have taken one of my kids' dogs to one of my favorite restaurants there, Canteen. Actually, so on the beach. So the answer is they are dog friendly.
Let's go to Janet in the car. What do you think, Janet?
Hi. Well, first of all, big fan. First of all, I don't hate dogs. I love dogs. I just don't think they belong in a public venue. And if we're talking about dogs, why aren't we talking about cats too? Or I have chickens. Can I bring one of my chickens?
Yeah, chickens.
Let me just say, I'm in favor of chickens being at outdoor patios.
Remember the bus?
Are you
where they
not
had chickens in the back of the bus?
Yeah, I do. There was a hibachi there, cooking chicken in the back. So, Janet, you're against having chickens in restaurants? Is that what your position is?
I just think, leave your animals home. I don't see the need for people to go out and have to have their dog with them all the time. I don't get it. And I love dogs, but
It's not the place. I got it. No, you have strong feelings too. We appreciate that.
We have a gentleman watching on YouTube, and we just put the picture. Beck is watching on YouTube.
Yeah,
we just put the picture up of Jim walking his dog on the Champs-Elysees. And I think we have a new feature here. Thank you, Beck, for suggesting
I prefer we don't have a new feature.
Every day we should have a different picture of Jim. Jim looming at the hot bar.
These are Beck's suggestions as to what Jamie, when he's doing absolutely no work during the day, could be doing instead. Go ahead.
Jim enjoying his roasted Brussels sprouts. Yeah. And Jim using a Q-tip.
That's great. Obviously,
because Jim
a long-time listener.
has rhapsodized about the use of Q-tips. Roast. Are you doing anything strange with Brussels sprouts you'd like to share with people?
I like roasted. I like them lightly sautéed and fried too. And the Q-tip hour, which is one of our most notorious segments ever, was the Q-tip as a vehicle for eroticism, I think was
that is right.
how we elevated that discussion.
And you talked about it for 3 hours.
We did.
877.
Actually, it wasn't even on the air, but we just talked about it actually, it was on the air.
877.
Thankfully, this is almost over.
It's almost over.
Can we block Beck, or what do we do with this guy?
I think it's a great idea. We're going to look into this right after the show, Jamie.
Jennifer and Weymouth.
A new feature. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. First of all, I love your show.
Thanks.
I really enjoy listening to
Thank you. That's very nice
and
of you.
I appreciate it.
Thanks.
So about New York City.
Yeah, well, what about, great.
Yeah, no, so they're allowed in outdoor dining places.
Oh.
I guess it's up to the restaurant owner.
Yeah.
But I will say that my sister has 2 little dogs, and she takes them everywhere into all the restaurants. Nobody says anything. So I don't know what's going on there, but...
How do you feel about it? Forget your sister. How do you feel about little dogs being everywhere?
So I think I'm kind of moderate about it.
Yeah.
I think that there should definitely be a place for them. And if some restaurants, a few want to advertise that they're for dogs outside and people, that's fine. But I don't think they should be allowed everywhere because there are people that are allergic or afraid of dogs.
That's a good point.
It's a balance.
So let me, Jennifer, since you sound like a very wise caller, just so we get a sense of this, would you have any interest at all if they were to generate a ChatGPT image of me and a Q-tip? Does that be honest? You can be straight.
Of you and what?
A Q-tip.
A Q-tip.
Does that interest you at all?
We might be arrested.
Okay, I said a Q-tip. Yeah, a Q-tip.
Some of the obscenity laws, Jim.
Apparently not.
Careful.
Jennifer, you're an honest woman. Thank you for the call. We appreciate it.
Okay, apparently there are lots of dog parks in the South End, including at Myers and Chang.
What was that guy talking? Right behind Myers and Chang. That's absolutely right.
And
what was Joanne doing here before, by the way?
There's also a dog park behind Whole Foods in Cambridge and Fresh Pond. I didn't know that. And then lots of people say...
there is.
Lots of people say they've gone to other states. Mary from Hamilton says in South Carolina, where she is right now, they can take their dog to every single outdoor dining establishment. And pubs in England allow dogs inside and out. And sometimes, Jim, they sit right up in the booth.
Really? That I don't like.
You don't like that?
I don't like that.
They sit right there and they have their knife and their fork and they wear a napkin around their neck
really
and they
cute.
cut their food.
Okay.
Just like the human beings do.
You know what we are?
We're done.
We're done.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
We're done. But we are going to work on this feature of Jim.
No, we're not. We're really not, by the way.
Different phases of Jim's life. Jim brushing his teeth. Jim
with a Q-tip.
Jim with the Q-tip.
Jim flossing. Now I think that would really be appealing to a lot of our listeners.
Jim sitting at the hot bar, stealing food.
Let's move on. Okay. Let's thank people for listening.
Okay,
and move on.
We are done. Thank you very much for tuning in today. Thank you very much to people that came down to the Boston Public Library.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
If you haven't had enough, and maybe you have by now, you can keep up with this 24/7 way of our podcast. Tomorrow, we're going to be back here at the Boston Public Library again. Governor Healy is going to be here with us from 1 to 2, taking your questions and ours, and audience members for another session of Ask the Governor. Also, we've got a live music Friday morning performance from the African Diasporic Jazz Group. Diaspora.
You got it.
Thank you. Jazz group.
Can you make, let's be clear, 11:30. Usually music is at 1 o'clock.
Yep.
Tomorrow it's 11:30 because the mayor is going to be here from 1 to 2.
Media maven Sue O'Connell is also going to be here, and guests reflecting on the 10-year anniversary of the 2013 Boston Marathon bombing. GBH's Philip Martin, sculpture artist Pablo Eduardo, who made the memorial on Boylston Street, and bombing survivor Dave Fortier, who's now president of the One World Strong Foundation. want to thank our crew, Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss, our engineer, John the Claw Parker, our executive producer, Jay Bologna, who's on top of the situation for the pictures of Jim. Yeah. Special thanks to our BPL team, Sai Patel, Evelyn Brito, Angelica Marrero, and Colin Cockrell. I'm Marjorie Egan.
Well, I have one thing to say.
What's that,
How
Jim?
about as a compromise? How about 2 days a week you actually do work for the show, and the other days you do the chat GPT thing, okay?
I think that's a reasonable,
let's talk about that.
reasonable compromise. Absolutely.
Have a wonderful day. We'll see you back at the library with the governor tomorrow. Bye.
Bye.